Hello and welcome to another edition of the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dfs 85. I am back again after a long day of grinding from morning to night. Being on the West Coast, I started it off. I did sleep in a little bit, but 9 a.m. when the games start. And I've been watching games all day, been grinding, been tilting as I do, patting ourselves on the back for some calls, losing some coin flips, tilting some more, winning some bets, losing some bets. It's been a roller coaster of emotion, but the show must go on. We'll talk a little bit about the games and kind of hash that through. We do have 15 games for tomorrow that we're going to talk about, going game by game. I will be joined by Mike here shortly. He's just catching up on some stuff, watching a few of the games that are just, coming to an end here. And there's some other things going on, but he'll join me. We'll break it down. We'll do our thing. Of course, if you guys are watching live, thank you very much. Make sure you hit that like button, interact in the chat, questions, comments, concerns, all of that good stuff. I will answer those throughout the show and post them. Lots of cool stuff going on. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be on the Mean Street show again with Chris. He's invited me back, which I'm super excited about. We're going to talk a little bit about the madness that happened today. We're going to talk about some of the games that tomorrow, so make sure you tune into that. That'll be like around noon, 12:30 Eastern on the FTN YouTube channel. Yeah, some cool stuff going on, huh? St. Peter's, who would have thought? And it wasn't even Casey and Defo. It was Doug Edert and Daryl Banks just whooping on Kentucky, taking them to OT and knocking them out. And this iteration of Kentucky, while good and riding on Oscar T, we know in the March Madness, you need good guard play to do damage. Kentucky's guard play was a little suspect at times. And that really, hurt them end of the day. I am feeling pretty sad. It has gone final. Arkansas did beat Vermont 75-71. They did push them. I really, really felt confident in this Vermont victory. We did win Vermont +5, so there is, some happiness there. My guy Ben Shungu, who had a real rough first half, finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and an assist. Ryan Davis 20 and 3. I really felt like the Catamounts were going to pull this one off. So I am sad. And I did make a bet with Corey, so I'm gonna have to do the whole Arkansas pig suey call. I'm gonna save that for the end of the show. So if you guys are watching and you want to see that happen, you're gonna have to watch the entire time that Mike and I are talking about basketball, because I'm not gonna start with it and then have you guys turn in for bed. So I'll wipe the tear from my eye about Vermont not winning and then having to make a fool of myself later. All right, there's Mike. What's up, buddy? How you doing?
What's up, Walt? I'm doing well.
Yeah,
I'm a little tired, but I'm pushing through it. But yeah, wild day, huh? It's always a wild day.
Crazy. I was just talking about how wild it is that St. Peter's. I mean, you nailed the Oscar T call. So good on you, but they're guards and nobody else really did anything. And the guards on the other side, in March Madness, as they say, guard play wins out. And yeah, it wasn't even Ndefo who did anything for them. It was Daryl Banks and Doug Edert, who are two names that we didn't really think were going to end up doing that much. And they ended up
not at all.
Their scores on the slate. So crazy. It does open things up for the Hokies though. Maybe that Final Four round is on. Yeah. So mix some things. I was just talking about how I'm kind of sad at Vermont. Nice second half from my guy Shungu, but they just couldn't deal with the athleticism quite there. Jalen Williams with a double-double. Umude, who was coming on at the right time. So the Hogs get tested in the first round for a second straight year, but ultimately pull through. So was that one that you were surprised to see it was that close, or you thought they'd push them, right?
No, I thought it was going to be close, and I actually thought for a second there that Vermont was going to pull it out in the second half. And also after that weird start where I don't know what the hell's going on with Musselman, but he pulled Note like in the first minute of the game, and then you're kind of scratching your head and you're kind of thinking like, is this going to be another Texas A&M debacle? So I wasn't too surprised that Vermont pushed them. They had a chance there at the end. If that steal maybe went the other way, that kind of went off Note's head and then bounced off the guard's hand. If it went the other way, maybe they sent it to overtime or hit a 3. But yeah, Amude played very well. Note had a really big second half. Jalen Williams kind of did his thing when he needed to. So it was just a little too much Arkansas.
Yeah, little
I wasn't
too much.
surprised it was close.
Yeah, a little too much.
How about Teddy Buckets?
And yeah, that was there was two.
He was in the zone
today,
huh?
And I really was close to going him, but I was selling so hard on Shungu, or buying, I should say, that I had to stay with him. But yeah, Teddy, man, that and there's a lot of people on Twitter who are like that they don't know the Teddy Bucket story. So I don't like this kid, and he talks too much trash. And it's like, yeah, well, that's Teddy.
Yeah,
and
he's been at what, 5 different schools in the last.
Yeah, he's been at 5 different schools. He doesn't give a damn. Doesn't if you like him or not. If he's gonna keep on,
he got to win today. So, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Huge. I'm glad that this program got a win because a couple years ago in that Auburn game with our boy Trevelyan Queen, like they were one buzzer beating shot away from pulling a shocking upset, and they've been close a couple times. So I'm glad they finally pulled through, and now we're gonna have an interesting, second round matchup against Arkansas, where that matchup, to me, I wasn't sure how Teddy would do against UConn. Like I didn't expect him to score, 37, but I didn't expect him to score like 10 either. I thought he'd do good, but against Arkansas and a kind of a pace up, like, yeah, I'm going to be paying probably $8K for him there. Cause, he's going to love playing against them and kind of running and gunning. So interesting. Any other, shocking results so far for you? Akron, they're now down by 2. They were kind of, pushing UCLA, but it looks like with 25 seconds, they may fall through by the wayside here. Big game for Hawkeyes. Again, we got to stop fading this guy, man. He's flirting with a triple-double every damn game.
He's so good.
He's too good, man.
But yeah, my Akron plus 14.5 is looking pretty well, I think.
Nice.
I would have liked to see them pull it out. That Akron team is fun. They play tough. They play tough defense. But we have to talk about the Spiders, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
I hyped it up. I was going against everybody, and they pulled it out.
That was awesome.
Always go against Fran McCaffrey chalk every single time. It's just an easy decision. But yeah, this team is good. They're good, man.
No, that was a great betting call. And then we talked about it for the DFS side, and I said every time I fade, games against Iowa or players against Iowa, I always feel like, damn, why did I do that? And I was like, nope, I'm playing Burton. I know he's a little high priced. I'm just going to go for it. And it worked out.
So did Gilliard.
We got that call. You got the Richmond call. So yeah, there was some good stuff that happened today. Looks like Cody Riley just blocked a layup attempt by Ali. So that's about it, I think. And then the other one going against, and I know I kind of had like a spat with Rob on Twitter because technically because I said it was a little leveragey to pick Providence because that was the other one that won, and it was like 35% of bracket. So I guess yes, technically the public was still on Providence, but the vocalness and you don't see too many underdogs pulling that percentage of the brackets. 30.
Yeah, for a 13 seed. Yeah, it's way high.
To me, that felt like a leverage call. So technically,
100%.
Mathematics are involved. Yes, Providence was more involved by the public, but come on, most people that talk were pushing the South Dakota State.
People are miserable and want to give you a hard time. That's all that is.
I don't get rattled. I don't get rattled too much on Twitter. I'm close with Rob. I like him, but I was a little irritated today, but that's okay. I don't get rattled too often, but it did happen.
You just gotta roll it off your shoulder, shoot back at him like I do on Twitter, and then that's it.
Yeah. But yeah, man, the second half really played out. The first half, you and I we kind of started rolling with the the fade Baylor Sherman train there, and we felt good about that. And the first 10 minutes, he had like 18 to 20 fantasy points. Was like, well, shit, what do we do? But the second half, they buckled down and he hit 37, which was a great score, obviously, but he could have put up 50 the way he was going, and they really made a conceded effort to shut him down. I think he was under 20 in the second half. So that defensive Providence and then just enough shot making in the end, was enough. And Horkler played really well. And Ed Crosswell, God, that would have been a sick call. He actually ended up having the game we thought Watson might have because they continue to split the minutes. So now we know, even in matchups that are good where Watson has to defend the post, Cooley, for whatever reason, is going to split their minutes. So I think going forward, you can't use Watson in anything besides alt GPP. So that's the lesson learned here for sure now.
I was very lucky. I swapped him out of my main this morning just because I wanted to get more safe for the Mania. But I did have him in my secondary alt lineup, and that lineup kind of tanked because he played, 15, 18 minutes. It's just you can't be trusted. His ceiling is so high, but he needs the minutes, and you never know when it's going to happen. But I had an overall pretty good fantasy day. I think I'm third right now in the high dollar, but it's probably going to drop a little bit because of Remy Martin. But overall, a pretty solid, and everything was anchored by Tshiebwe at 15 or 16%, which was awesome.
That was a great call. You definitely nailed that one. I was happy I got my conviction plays right, with like Triple J at like 5%.
Yeah, that's a great call.
Thing, Burton, but I'm running so bad on flips. I should have just listened to you because you were much higher on Mayo, and I just have to, be super cute that I am, and I played Easley, who was horrible at Nebraska and is horrible now and got benched. So had I played Mayo, I think I may have had a better day, but lost that one. I ended up playing Shungu, who wasn't horrible, but obviously Teddy Allen was way better. And then KJ Williams in the first half had like his worst game ever, and he's not really that much better this half. So looks like Murray State's up by 9 with 3 minutes, but it's a Trey Hannibal show, which is not really what I planned on by playing KJ. So it's not going to be the best first day for me, but we have a couple more slates to deal with, and
big slate tomorrow.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes. It was a lower scoring slate than I thought too. And Remy Martin again, they're gonna have to price him up over 5K because he's crushing it. And still O'Shea Agbaji just doesn't look very good. I don't know, he's broken, I guess. But what do you think before we dive into the slate here? The Mountain West, man, they were hyped up into the sun. A lot of us like them, and we thought they'd have a chance to maybe make a little bit of run here with some of the teams. I mean, at least I thought San Diego State would win one game, but no, an 0-4 performance for the Mountain West. What do you think? What happened there?
Oh, they kind of laid an egg, right? Colorado State, I mean, they hit some foul trouble, right? Once Roddy and I think Stevens had foul trouble, or was it more? It was Stevens, right?
Yeah, he fouled out like with still 5 minutes or something.
Yeah, so in the second half, and then they hit that rut where Michigan hit a couple threes, and then the game completely flipped. I mean, Colorado State looked really good in the first half. So they kind of laid an egg there in the second half. Boise got off to a terrible start. They didn't really start playing well into the second half. So yeah, again, just laying an egg. And San Diego State looked good the whole entire game until the end. They were up by 14 points with 8 minutes left. Yeah. It's kind of sad for the league because I was high on a lot of those teams. But yeah, I think San Diego State I have the worst taste in my mouth because I picked them in my survivor pool, so I'm out already, which is never fun. And I was feeling good, halfway through the second half, but they just kind of blew it. And even when Kalkbrenner went out with an injury too, I thought they had it in the bag, but Trey Alexander made some plays down the stretch. Greg McDermott is just too tough of a coach, man. It's incredible that Creighton's going to the round of 32.
It's pretty nuts. And I think ultimately the problem with SDSU is that they only have two guys, Pulliam and Bradley, who could create any kind of offense. And I think that ultimately caught up to them, which is unfortunate because getting Bradley in the portal was an amazing pull, but I think that he may have overestimated the rest of his team's offensive ability. They probably could have used a 3-point shooter from the portal, maybe a secondary creator. They just didn't have the offense that they needed there. It is worth noting, you mentioned Kalkbrenner. I mean, just destroyed is it ACL? Maybe, I'm not sure, but that's more that Creighton's going to have to deal with, being shorthanded here with a matchup looming with a Kansas Jayhawk team. I was like, what's happening? Am I in a saw film?
No, sorry.
You're good.
Background noise.
The Kansas team that is, obviously they're clubbing Texas Southern right now, but I don't know, man. The last couple games, and I know they won the Big 12 tournament, so I can't be listening like they're not playing well, but I just have a really weird feeling about this Kansas team. Don't necessarily think they're going to lose to Creighton, but I don't know. I'm starting to question my Final Four pick. And then the only other game I wanted to talk about beforehand was North Carolina dropping a 95 spot on Marquette. That was a very hot shooting performance by Caleb Love. Obviously, if they shoot like that against Baylor, they'll probably outrun them. What like early preview? What do you think, Baylor versus North Carolina? Do you think Baylor has the energy to keep up with North Carolina if they're playing like that?
Yeah, I'm going to be all over Baylor from a betting perspective there. And we've seen the inconsistency with North Carolina all year. We'll put up 95 against Duke, and then they'll lay an egg against Virginia Tech, right, in the ACC tournament. They're just so inconsistent. This kind of has the feeling where they have their ceiling performance round one, and then they kind of fizzle out and have a more floor performance in round two against a very stout Baylor defense. They're just way too inconsistent and unpredictable for me. So I'll definitely be on the Baylor side for sure.
Yeah. That might be a good spot to take advantage of people, feeling kind of gung ho and excited about North Carolina and thinking, they're going to make a run when, there's a bad game looming in there. All right. So that finishes up the talk there. UCLA did just finalize and beat Akron. Looks like Murray State's clinging to a 5-point lead, and Kansas is just kind of sleepwalking through a 30-point lead right now. So need them to hang on to that -22 though. All right, so jumping into the slate, again, those of you that are watching, I see the numbers going up, so I appreciate you guys staying up late with us again. If you have questions, comments, concerns, anything of that nature, pop them in the comment section, and we'll get to those throughout the day. So first game on the slate is Loyola Chicago versus Ohio State. DK has it as a straight-up pick 'em right now. Tempo rankings, Ohio State is 290th, Loyola 309th. This is one where I don't know what the bracket percentage. I don't really get into looking at that and be like, the public says this, but I feel like there's a good amount of people going to be on the Ramblers here. Ohio State kind of limped into the end of the season. This is a prime spot where it seems like they'll get smacked. But I would have preferred Ohio State to get maybe a team with a little more high octane offense that could push them to the brink. I think Loyola, while I think they're going to win, I kind of feel like they might let Ohio State hang around a little bit. And then, if Branham gets hot or Liddell or something, we could maybe be in for a Buckeyes win here. So with that being said, what are you doing with the DFS approach here? Because Loyola games tend to be kind of exciting for DFS purposes.
Right. I mean, you see Ohio State and you definitely, your first thought is to attack them because their defense is on the poorer side, right? They rank 131st nationally in KenPom per defensive efficiently. So they can be attacked, especially at the guard spot. But like you said, you have this Loyola squad who is going to slow the game down, and they're so balanced that it makes it difficult to get behind playing or playing any of these guys from a fantasy perspective. I mean, especially based off their prices, it's hard to. There's way better options on a 15-game slate than to kind of put all your eggs in a basket on a much more a very well balanced Loyola squad. While I do agree with you that they are going to pull this one out, there was some news that Kyle Young and Zed Key are both going to be available for Ohio State, which makes them a little more scarier, right? For a matchup for Loyola. So I do see a lot of people writing Ohio State off. I don't know if you should do that. I mean, we both know EJ Liddell is a problem. I don't think I'm going to pay the 9-8 for him to get him in any of my lineups tomorrow, but I think this game is going to be tightly contested. But probably from a fantasy perspective, I'm probably going to stay away. Yeah,
100%. And I would be tempted to maybe use Brandon because he's in that sweet spot 6-7. But again, I have that weird. I used to be the whole late game hammer for many years, and now I've worked through that, and I don't care about that anymore. But now I have this hang up, especially like the last 2 years with COVID and stuff, of not burning my PMR too early because it's been a real clear edge having PMR throughout the slate. I don't necessarily think there's going to be any weird news that happens during the tournament, but you never know. And I don't want to be burning too many spots early. I do like Branham for maybe GPP purposes here. I could see him hitting some big shots down the stretch, but I'm not starting anyone in my main lineup here. I think we can probably just bounce on to the next one. And we had a few people wondering why it's not 16 games. Delaware state legislation, I guess, they're not allowed to gamble or something. I don't know what that's all about. But they're not on the slate because of that. So in case you're wondering why there's not a Villanova game versus Delaware, that's why. It's sad because I would love to, be able to talk about Jameer Nelson Jr. and make all you guys feel really old, myself included, but I guess we can't do that this time. All right, next game on the slate is Jacksonville State versus Auburn. This should be, I don't know, man. Auburn is -15. It's 138 over under. Auburn 41st in Temple ranking. Jack State 277. To me, I want to kind of take that Auburn -15 spot on the corporate bets as we talk here. We're going to need some questions about it in the chat already. but away from home, neutral court, they haven't looked like the same team. So there's a good little spot for them to figure out, all their quirks, get over the fact that, the home crowd isn't there. They'll have some fans that travel, but, kind of try out things and work out any jitters that the, the freshmen and guys without tournament experience might have. So do you think that -15 is in play here? And then I guess we'll jump into the DFS side here, and you can lead us off with this game as well.
So I don't have a play on this game, but if I were to have a lean, I actually would be leaning the other way, the Jacksonville State side. And you mentioned that Auburn has struggled in any game that they play, not in their home arena. So that's one thing that you definitely have to consider. But it's more of the style Jacksonville State plays at. The one thing that you can't do against Auburn is attack them at the rim, just because of Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith make just a complete wall in the paint and don't allow any easy buckets at all. Jacksonville State doesn't really play that attacking style offense. They spread it out. They shoot a ton of threes. They kind of try to beat you from the outside, which if you're going to beat Auburn, that's how you're going to do it, is exploiting their kind of erratic guard play. So just because of those reasons, I'd be leaning the Jacksonville State side. But at the same time, this Auburn team can explode at any moment. So they're not a team that I'd like to fade often. So I'm probably going to stay away. From a fantasy perspective, I don't know if I want to pay up for Kessler or Smith in this matchup, just because of the way Jacksonville State plays. Like I mentioned, they don't really attack the rim that often. So I don't know if Kessler can rack up all the blocks. The rebounding upside is there for both of them. Maybe we do get a little more of run from Jabari Smith, because we know Bruce Pearl kind of limits his minutes a little bit, but maybe he lets him ride a little longer here in a tournament setting, especially if Jacksonville State can keep it close. But his price has got up to 8.6. I think there may be better options out there, like a Kofi in that range, that I'm looking at a little more than Jabari Smith. I did want to ask you on the Jacksonville State side, some of these guys are priced down a little bit. They're very balanced. They don't have really one go-to scorer. Maybe Darian Adams is their guy. But are you looking or interested in any of these Jacksonville State guards as a potential mid-range kind of play tomorrow?
I am, absolutely, yeah. So as we're seeing today, even in games where the lower mid-majors lost, we're seeing that guard play really went out. And I just want to keep, banging that drum that these guards are going to be leaned on heavily. And Adams, really, he's probably more the obvious one, just because he has the highest usage rate on the team. He has the highest shot rate on the team. He's one of their better three-point shooters, although they have 3 really elite shooters on their team, actually 4, has the highest assist rate, second highest, and then a very high steal rate as well. So he played for Troy a couple years ago. I feel like he played in the tournament before with them. I could be wrong, but he's quite good. And at 6'2", I think if you want to go with that more hybrid balance and not rely on value, even though quite a bit of the value today did well, so it would have worked just fine. He is the one that I would primarily be looking at. I think Auburn is, sloppy enough with the ball that we could take advantage of them, even, with a lower major team. They get their shots blocked. Obviously they have Kessler out there blocking shots, but they have guys like Katie Johnson, Wendell Green, who, are constantly trying to drive into the rim, draw fouls, and they get shots blocked. They also turn it over at a high rate because, and this is credit to Stills, because he really, hit the nail on the head with this one. During that time when they didn't have Zep Jasper, and I know it sounds silly to say because he's not really an impactful player, but he is not necessarily in the stat sheet, but he runs the offense. He doesn't require shots to be effective like KD does. And he's really, more of that facilitator role, and he can hit threes when, let the game come to him. So they do a lot better with ball control when he's running the offense. And then when it's Wendell Green and KD, I do notice their turnovers spike quite a bit because they're trying to do a little bit too much. And that's the type of players they are. They don't have that experience yet. I do like Darian Adams quite a bit at 6'2". I think he's one that makes sense to run in your main. I'm wondering if people will overlook that, especially after today with some of the guys like, Joe Bryant, who was heavily owned, and he got to 20. He was fine, but I wonder if that makes people a little skittish. Other guys you can look at, maybe Jalen Finch and Jalen Gibbs. Gibbs shoots 42% from 3-point range, Finch 36%, and then they have Damari King shoots 45%. So they have several kind of sharp shooters, and if they get hot, perhaps they can make Auburn panic. I will say I don't think they'll get panicked in it. And there was that point in the first half today in that Vermont game where they built a 7-8 point lead, and I saw no Tatum got benched. I said, oh, here we go, they're panicking. but they did pick it up. So I wonder if Auburn will have that moment of, oh shit, what's happening? Let's play serious. And I think the guys on the Jacksonville State side are cheap enough that we can really take them. So in order for me, I'd be at Adams, probably Gibbs, and then Damari King and Finch last. So I think any one of those four are viable, but Adams would be the only one that I can definitively say I'm confident in for my main build. You mentioned you're not sure if you're going to pay up for Kessler. Man, it's 8-8 is. I wish if he would have been like 9, even 9-2, like 400 more. I think I could really entertain that fade a lot more. But at 8-8, I feel like he's going to really control the rim and the paint and just have one of those games where he's blocking 6, 7, 8 shots. Whether he scores, double-digit real points or not, it remains to be seen. But I think he'll have a big, peripheral stat game, and he'll probably be pushing 40. So we saw today scores. They're getting higher now, obviously, but they were a lot lower than you would think because there was a bunch of landmines. And I think at this point, taking those guaranteed, points in your main is probably going to be a little bit more effective than taking these unnecessary, risks. Although we did take some today and they paid off, took some others and they didn't. Just the name of the game. So for me right now, I'm on the fence. I think I'm leaning more towards playing Kessler in my main than not. And then with Jabari Smith only 200 cheaper, he's probably more in the GPP category for me now. Although I could see him really dominating and having a big game. It's also his first in tournament experience. It's going to be a lot of scouts watching him. Although he's had people watching him his whole life, so I don't know how nervous he'd actually be. But for 200 more, I would just take Kessler and get those secondary stats and less reliant on scoring. All right, so moving on, let's see. Somebody asking about the Nova Delaware game. Just talked about that, so you probably asked that beforehand. All right, so Montana State versus Texas Tech. We have Texas Tech minus 15 and over-under of 131.5. Of course, Texas Tech very slow, 212. Montana State 158. I like this Montana State team. I would have preferred them to get a slightly better draw because I think they have the tools and the shooting necessary to, pull off one of those shocking upsets. Although they get a bad matchup similar to what Longwood had today. Longwood, who's been really good this year, Tennessee's defense just smothered them, made them really irrelevant. Nobody really did anything. And that's my fear here for the Montana State guys. So I'm probably not going to be trying to get much exposure here. Xavier Bishop is only 5'8", though. It's definitely an intriguing price for him. He could fall into that, Joe Bryant, category of being cheap. Maybe he's going to be chalky because of that. He has a high usage rate over 23%, a shot rate almost 25%, or an assist rate over 24%. He does quite a bit. He used to be a big, stat sheet stuffer at UMKC. So he's been their main guy. So that's definitely a decent price for him. And I could see using him. Texas Tech's defense has allowed certain guys on the perimeter to actually put up pretty decent fantasy scores, but typically on a large slate, I'm not going to be looking to target against the Red Raiders too often, at least in my main build. They do have my man, Raekwon Battle, on the team, Washington Huskies transfer. I really wanted him. I got to mention my dude. I really wanted him to work out for the Huskies, but Hopkins broke his shooting. When he was in high school, he was like a damn near 60% dead-eye shooter. Like he would never miss. And he just couldn't get it going for the Huskies. He has games where he'll play like 8 minutes. He comes off the bench, but then he'll have games where he'll play like 25 minutes, like the game against Weber State, where a lot of people thought Weber was going to knock him off. They won 69-66. He had 17 points. He got to the foul line 14 times. So every time he got the ball, he was attacking and getting himself to the line. He is a pretty decent free throw shooter, known more for his 3-point shooting. And he's had a usage rate 4 of his last 5 games in the mid 25 to 27% range. So I was hoping he would come into it like 3.5 or 3.4, and I might have gotten a little cute there and said, let's use him, but they did price him at 4.5, and it's pretty hard to justify that because 4.5 on DraftKings isn't what 4.5 is on FanDuel. And even 2 years ago, 4.5 on DraftKings used to be closer to 3K with the way pricing was, but now 4.5 feels more like 5, 6K to some of these guys because of what these 4, 5, and 5K guys are actually doing. So a guy like Raekwon that's not going to get probably more than 18 to 20 minutes, we likely can't use him at the 4 or 5 price. But I do want to mention he's a guy I used to watch him in high school and stuff. I'm a big fan. All right, Texas Tech side, and the prices are cheap. Kevin McCullers, he's up to 5.6 now, but he's playing bigger minutes. It rolls there. If he plays like what we know he can play and be healthy, he's a 7K guy. Bryson Williams is there at 6K. He's not going to knock your socks off. He's probably not even going to put up 30, but he's a guy that's just going to get that 4X number pretty consistently, putting up 22 to 25 fantasy points, no more, no less. So if you value that safety, definitely can use him. He's a pretty opportunistic scorer, and he does it well. And then you have Adonis Arms over there at 6'3". He's been really quite good this year, even with McCullough healthy. Tough for me to justify paying that price for him. Shannon at 5'1" is interesting. And then Marcus Santos Silva's 4'2". They gave him some additional minutes there. It seemed like in the conference tournament, it was instead of 10 or 11, it was like 16, but he put up 23, 15, and 14 and a half in that 3-day span, which is pretty solid. I think 4.2 is still a playable price for him. And if he gets about 18 here against this Montana State front court, which, it's not used to having to deal with a Big 12 front court, I think they could possibly do some damage here. Silva, maybe not to his VCU numbers where he's putting up 30 and 10, but maybe more so than what he's been doing. Montana State's a pretty porous offensive rebounding team. They've been much better on the defensive glass. So I could see a lot of one and done possessions where, Silva gets some easy rebounds. Maybe he pushes value at 4.2. So one of those value guys to kind of have in your scopes. There will be some other value that emerges as we go, but he's one of the guys that I'm looking at for now. What do you think?
So anytime you see Texas Tech on a slate, especially a 15-game one, you probably want to stay away. They are I think they're the number 1 rated defense per KenPom in the entire nation. I think they should handle this Montana State team pretty easily. But like you said, there are some cheap or underpriced options here. Although it's not the greatest matchup, you can still take a look at them. So Terrence Shannon is healthy now. He's gotten 25 minutes, I guess, his last few games. And you have to think that Mark Adams is going to let him kind of unleash here in the tournament setting. And maybe we see him get up to, 30, 32 minutes because he is overall their best offensive player. 5'1" is definitely too cheap. We typically see him when he's fully healthy in like the mid 6K range when he's a full go. So it's a more risky play because we don't know how many minutes he's going to get, but talent level, he's underpriced. So I do have some interest, more of a GPP type of play. I like your Santos Silva call. He's definitely somebody that I glanced over and wasn't really considering, but that is a cheap price for him if he's going to kind of push 20 minutes. He's super active, and this is a good matchup for him because Montana State does like to work through the post, through Bello down low. I was actually looking at Jabril Bello a little bit because he does have the highest usage rate on Montana State, and they do try to get the ball in the post a lot. I don't know how effective they're going to be against this Texas Tech team, but he's only 5,400. Like him and Bishop are very interesting pieces, especially if you're looking at like a last man in. So they're definitely on my radar. Am I going to prioritize them? No, because this definitely isn't the matchup on this slate that you want to prioritize these types of guys. But they are cheap, and I'm looking at both of them for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with Bishop, like he's going to play the entire game and probably take a ton of shots. Just a quick update. San Fran is in overtime with Murray State, and Booyah has 36 real. So there's another guy I usually use, and I didn't tonight. So that's fun. KJ Williams still struggling, but they're trading buckets with him and Tevin Brown. So this is tough. It's, because the winner of this game's got to be licking their chops, right? Because, St. Peter's leaving. Oh, a bucket by KJ Williams. How about that? And an N1. All right. Wow. Patrick Tate, 10-6, 3 steals, 3 blocks. Okay. Missed that one too. Man, what a weird slate.
All right. He was 4,500. Looks like it pushed me down to 5th place in the high dollar, which is still okay. I can't complain about that.
For sure. That's tough. So next game, Yale versus Purdue. This is one I like quite a bit. Purdue minus 16, over under of 144. Yale 90th tempo ranking, Purdue 249. When this matchup was announced, and you and I were doing on Sunday, just hanging out, talking about the brackets when they were being announced in Yale, we both, right away were like, oh wow, this is a hell of a spot for Azir Swain. And that was something when this slate pricing dropped, a few hours back. I went right to Yale to see what we were working with on him. And he's 6'2", which is a pretty good price for what his capability is. And honestly, a lot of the Yale guys are quite intriguing to me here. I think all of them got a little underpriced, except maybe like Matthew Cotton, who is still kind of viable. But yeah, Zaire Swain at 6'2" is somebody that I feel like I'm going to be having in a lot of lineups. I'm comfortable coring him. We know Purdue's perimeter defense is certainly where they can be, attacked. Swain, if you're not familiar with him, he's been on this team for quite a while. Played with, I think, he was on there with Atkinson. And when they were, kind of a really decent team, and they made the tournament a while back, like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. But he's been there for a long time. He has a shot rate over 32%, usage rate of 28%. He's pretty much top 30 in the country in his shot rate. Makes about 36% of his threes. He's taken 193, so a very high volume shooter. He draws about 5 fouls per 40. He does all the things you would expect, a number one player to do. And just because the Ivy League doesn't mean he can't play. We frequently see Ivy League guys, go on to the transfer portal because they're not allowed to grad transfer in their same school. We're seeing it with Jalen Llewellyn from Princeton. He's got like 35 different high major teams bringing him off the hook. So these Ivy League kids can play, definitely. So don't sleep on Swain here at 6'2" against Purdue. I would not be surprised to see him put up a very huge score. Something like what we're seeing Jamari Bouye do with the 36. I do see prices here pretty advantageous for like a Jalen Gabadon. He's got a usage rate over 20%, draws 4.5 fouls per 40. Pretty decent 3-point shooter. He's taken a high volume over 103, high steal rate around 3.5%. So another guy that you can look at there kind of as a wing that I don't mind. And other prices, Matt Nolan at 4.3, he typically plays like 28 to 32 minutes a game. So if you don't want to take a chance on Santos Silva and you're not quite there with Swain, you could look at using Nolan. He is going to have more of that tweener matchup where he may have to end up, with T-Will a couple of times here or there, but he's a guy at 4.3 that can give us 20 pretty consistently, I think, regardless of matchup. And then even guys like, where is he at here? Isaiah Kelly at 3.6. He's been playing right around low to mid 20s. So another guy that is capable of putting up, 25 fantasy points or 5. So you have some options here to go and use, and you can potentially go with Swain and then a value and really open some things up. So I'm definitely pulling for the Yale side here for DFS purposes. On the other side for Purdue, Jaden Ivey, I wonder how popular he's going to end up. He usually, no matter what price, he always seems to pull like 25 to 30% ownership, even on big slates. 8.3 is a price that maybe that'll scare some people off. Like that was the Gilliard range today for Richmond, and he went nuts. So I like him if you can get there, maybe more of a GPP guy. I do think Trevion Williams is still too cheap at 6.8, but we're still dealing with a situation where we can't guarantee anything more than 17 to 20 minutes. So it's still kind of tough. With Zach Edey up over 7.4 now, I'm probably comfortably fading him, even though I think he could do well here. And then value-wise, we're still, like as usual, looking at Eric Hunter, who's 4.9, playing most of the game, and then Mason Gillis at 4.5. Gillis gives us some pretty nice exposure to the Purdue front court because he actually plays, as the 4 and all those minutes. He doesn't have to really typically split unless he gets into foul trouble. So at 4.5, we've seen him, hit these 22, 23, even, 19 fantasy point games that will get the job done at this 4.5 price tag. So for me, I think it's like a Swain Yale value, maybe a run back of Gillis. I really am thinking that this game is going to end up being high scoring and very advantageous from a DFS standpoint. So where are you at with the Yale guys and Purdue in general? I have some Purdue free futures, by the way, so I feel like I should be rooting them on more, but I just don't feel it with them.
I know it's hard to get behind them with that defense, that ball screen defense. They just get shredded so easily. But I have a play on the over of 143, I think it is right now. And I also have a play on Purdue minus 15. I think that this Yale team shouldn't be in the tournament. And they kind of got lucky because they had their absolute ceiling performance when they played Princeton in the Ivy League championship game. I mean, Swain was hitting contested fadeaway jump shots the entire game. Not only him, the rest of the team was too. I looked at the shot quality metrics after the game, and they had Princeton winning by double digits, so which is kind of incredible because Yale was up almost double digits the whole game just because of the way they were shooting.
That's nuts.
But yeah, so Purdue is always fantasy friendly, especially in the perimeter. So we talked about this before, but Azar Swain was definitely somebody that I was looking at before even looking at pricing, and he came in cheap enough that I'm super interested in him at 6,200. I do like your call on the Yale values as well. I don't know which one I'm going to go with yet. I have to dive into it a little deeper. But I'm going to try to get, at least one or two pieces from this game for sure. And on the Purdue, I really like the Purdue side as well, because I think they kind of put up like 85, 86, 90 points against this Yale team. They absolutely have nobody who can stop Edie and Trev inside. We talk about this all the time. It's really hard to plug one of them into your main just because of the minutes limits they're both on, because they can't play at the same time. But like Edie should absolutely eat this Yale team alive. I think he'll score every time he touches the ball. Am I going to play him at 7,400? No, maybe in a GPP. I also love Jaden Ivey as well. If my roster build kind of allows me to get that low 8K kind of range in there, I'm definitely going to be looking to him. This is a game where he can get out and transition and score at will. And for value on the Purdue side, I'm not really a Hunter fan. I'd rather play Gillis, I think, at the 4,500. You get some exposure to some rebounding upside, because I think Yale's going to be chucking a lot. Swain took 21 shots last game. I think he's going to take at least 15 in this one against the Purdue defense, which is probably going to be a higher pace game. And there's going to be a ton of rebounds. Maybe Gillis steals some from Edie and Williams. So he's definitely a really good value play as well.
Yeah, Gillis, he's actually had 7+ rebounds in 3 of his last 4. So
and he's playing decent minutes. He's playing around 30 minutes a game. The first hasn't been playing at all recently down the stretch in conference play.
Yeah, so Gillis he's siphoning off just enough, rebounds off those guys, and then if he's not the one getting into foul trouble, it's typically one of the others, and then he's getting to stay out there. But first, I expected a bigger season out of him. I think most people did, and next year he'll probably be really, really good. Just ended up being a little too raw. But yeah, I think I'm with you on the Gillis side, because Hunter will be out there for 37 minutes sometimes and still not have double-digit fantasy points. So kind of over that at this point. And he's not quite cheap enough to do that. If he was like 3.9 instead of 4.9, then I might look there. All right, moving on to a game that it seems like most people that grind CBB or talk it on a daily basis are split, like a real 50-50 here in this Miami versus USC game. I have USC -2 on DraftKings, 139.5 total. Miami 162nd tempo ranking, USC 236. So the talk is obviously Miami's front court has been very, targetable all season long. People will be wanting to use Isaiah Mobley. It's important that people realize, because sometimes I see it, people thinking that he's more like his brother Evan was, and he's a little more finesse than power. He can bang, he can block shots, he can rebound, but he's not necessarily, equipped, I guess, to fully take advantage of this matchup like a guy like Kofi Coburn would. I think he'll still put up a big number. He's only 8K, so that's a pretty nice price for him. And I think we'll see him be relatively highly owned because that matchup against Miami is so advantageous. So I do think he'll put up like a 30-35, which is really solid for that price. But I just want to reel people in a little bit that he's not gonna go out there and put up an Oscar Tshiebwe line. He could, but he's typically not. Drew Peterson sitting there at 7K. We've seen him put up some big numbers. I still find it difficult to pay 7K plus for him, but I think he's in a fine spot. Boogie Ellis is a nice GPP play at 6'3". His offense is starting to come on here. There is, I think I saw a note earlier about Reese Dixon Waters and Isaiah White being highly questionable to play. Dixon Waters dealing with a groin injury. They've been really, Enfield's been forcing him onto the floor, regardless of if he's good or not, to about 22, 23 minutes. So if he doesn't play, that puts Boogie Ellis in a position to maybe play the entire game, which, he's already playing about 32 minutes. And then maybe even Ethan Anderson, who's been, a forgotten man, a very productive DFS player at one time in his career. He's only 3.4K. If he were to get thrust in the starting lineup or just in general be, in a position to play 25 plus minutes, there you go at 3.4. I think he could certainly make value. The Miami side, there's decent prices here. Charlie Moore 7K. Magusti 7.3, Wong's down to 6.5. I know the industry will be, goo goo gaga about him because everybody always loves Wong except for me. And I, of course, am a Jordan Miller fan. So 6.8, I know the price is up on him, but I'm really feeling well and great about that price for him under 7K and the way he's playing. He's just the Miami guards have kind of lost their shot of their offensive playmaking a bit recently in the last couple of games, and he stepped up and he's doing just enough. And he's not that he's necessarily, creating shots. He's just in the right place at the right time, getting these offensive rebounding opportunities, making free throws, just doing all these little things that are putting him in a position to keep putting up these monster doubles. So I am going to still, bang that Jordan Miller drum. I do still like Charlie Moore at 7K. I think he has an opportunity to really kind of bother Boogie and force some steals. And then Sam Wardenberg, who I never play, but 5.9 for him is a pretty decent price at this spot as well. So I think there's a lot of DFS gold potentially in this game, and even McGusty as a 7-3 power play. He could easily have that booyah game that's going on right now and put up 40 plus real points in a particular matchup like this. So let me ask you, where do you sit between Miami, USC, and winning outright, and who else do you like playing for DFS?
It's a tough one, Walt. I've been going back and forth. Yeah, I saw that.
Cool.
I saw that. They pulled it out at the end. The overtime did not do my fantasy squad.
Shit.
Very well. I think I dropped down to like 10th just because of the overtime. But what are you going to do? So, yeah, I've been going back and forth on this all week, and I still haven't come to a conclusion that I'm comfortable with. Gun to my head, I would have to lean the USC side just because the poor shot selection on the Miami side worries me. And they do get absolutely crushed on the glass and inside. I know guard play, and it always kind of reverts back to it when I'm thinking about the matchup, because guard play is so important during March and in these matchup. And this is probably going to be a close game. And USC's backcourt is just not that great. Miami, they have a three-headed monster. All three of those guys can score, make plays down the stretch at all three levels, right? So yeah, I don't have a definitive stance on this one. But from a DFS perspective, like you said, there definitely are angles you can attack. I am not going to go with Jordan Miller. I'm sorry to say, Walt. This USC interior is just too stout. I don't think this is the matchup where he can, continue to go on a tear that he's been on. I mean, he's been playing so well recently, but I'd rather play one of the guards on Miami, either Charlie Moore or McGusty, I think. I think Charlie Moore is probably my favorite. McGusty's probably I would say Charlie Moore's more of the high upside play, while McGusty more of the safer because of his shot volume. And he's going to take the most shots out of the Miami backcourt. On the USC side, I do think people are going to gravitate towards Isaiah Mobley, like you mentioned. But yeah, the last few times I've watched USC play, he gets a little too comfortable standing in the corner or drifting out to the 3-point line. And that's how you want somebody. We know Miami kind of gets bullied inside, and you want somebody who's going to bang inside in the paint and take advantage of the old glass and get easy buckets. I don't know if that's Isaiah Mobley's game, especially of late. He likes to post up, but he posts up at like the 3-point line and likes to face up. And his post ups aren't on the block. It's more like the 3-point line, face up and try to make a play that way. I don't know if that's the greatest matchup that's going to exploit Miami as somebody like a Baycott or a Kofi or even a Nate Watson if he's getting minutes. Somebody like that, I think, is the worst matchup for Miami. So in that 8K range, I mean, we talked about Ivy there, and you also have Johnny Davis, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, in that like mid to low 8K range. I think they're just better options. I'm surprised you're not more on Drew Peterson. I thought you would be all gung-ho in this matchup for Drew Peterson at 7K.
I don't know. I'm used to paying cheaper for him, and that's just the sticker shock for me is a little too high. He's good though.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's a really good matchup for him. He should be able to get to any spot on the floor he wants against this Miami team.
Yeah,
he's just super inconsistent. Some games he's in the zone, and some games he kind of disappears, and that's kind of everybody on this USC team, which worries me if I'm going to try to plug one of them into my main. But yeah, if the injury news, both these guys are out, the backcourt is super thin. Ethan Anderson is a great call at 3,400. It's just going to be really hard to plan your lineup around that, especially after the Purdue Yale game. I'm hoping we get some more clarity in the morning. Boogie Ellis, again, is another guy that's inconsistent. One game looks really good. The other game he kind of disappears. But Miami's defense is pretty poor. I think they're right outside the top 150 in KenPom defensive efficiency. So you definitely can attack them. So these guys are definitely in my player pool. If I'm going to prioritize any one of them, it would probably be McGusty, I think, just because of his shot volume. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I haven't decided where I'm going yet.
Yeah, and I'm glad. I mean, I knew you'd see it because you see everything too. But yeah, I think with the Mobley matchup and how chalky I expect him to be, that's going to be one of the spots where I may pull back off of him because I just don't know that I'm going to see him banging down there and doing what he needs to do to put up that massive number. I think just with the amount of finesse and how he does like to show off. I mean, he's trying to play for an NBA contract event, right? He wants to get drafted. So you see him shooting a lot more outside shots than you did before, because obviously that's the best way for him to get in. So at 8K, I think he's definitely borderline fadeable. And yeah, I'll have to maybe consider Peterson more because of what you said there, but I don't know. The 7K price for others feels better than for him for whatever reason. So I'll have to decide.
Somebody on USC is going to have a really good game here.
Yeah.
It's just who is it going to be? Is Mobley going to be aggressive, or is Drew Peterson going to be the aggressor? Or is it going to be a mix? Like maybe we get a weird Chavez Goodwin game, I
think value-wise too, in addition to Ethan Anderson, we could maybe see a little bit of a decent game from Max Ogwinpalo, who's been kind of weaker lately, but he's only 4-1 and he's playing mid-20s minutes. So another potential value spot there.
It's a good matchup for him. Yeah. For any of those guys, right? Goodwin, him, any of those lengthy guys they have. I mean, they have a ton of them.
All right, moving on to it's a heartbreaking game for both of us, but a lot for you, obviously, because Notre Dame versus Bama. Bama -4, 152 over under. Bama's 12th tempo ranking, Notre Dame 256. I did have to, I had to change some things before the first game today once I had to make adjustments because I did have Rutgers, winning this matchup, but now I have to look at Notre Dame. So I did slide that back to the Bama side, thinking that they would beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame has shot making. I think Wesley will have a much better time in this matchup than he did, just a few days ago. But we're looking, whenever Bama's on the slate, we always want to look at bigs versus them. Atkinson, while, I would have preferred Clifford Omarui here, but we have to look at Atkinson. He's only 6'4". He does have, upside for 14, 15 rebounds. We've seen him do it before. He's starting to actually, not hang out on the perimeter as much. Midseason, him and Leshevsky, it's like, Bray had to get them back down low because they were all back there wanting to shoot, be on the perimeter, shooting mid-range jumpers. Leshevsky can shoot the three, and they weren't banging as much. And now we're seeing Atkinson start to do that. And he's had, a couple of really nice games. I mean, should even put up 38 against Rutgers just the other night, 26-6. That shocked me, to be honest. Shot 13 for 15. He had a lot of easy looks, but 6'4" against Bama, yeah. I could see him putting up a really big score, and his fouls, got to knock on this wood here I keep for that reason. I think his fouls have been in check, and we could see him have a pretty nice game. So I do like Atkinson quite a bit. He would be a guy at 6'4" I could see running in my main lineup. Not so much Leshevsky now that his price has crept up to 6'1". He has rattled off 3 straight games of 30-plus fantasy points, so that might make people look at him a little more. He does have games of 6, 10, and 9 rebounds during that stretch, so he could definitely perform against Bama, but when I think of like bangers or guys who can take advantage of this Bama matchup, it's not necessarily him, even though he does have that capability. And then, price-wise here, Dane Goodwin at 5'8", he's intriguing. He's been kind of lackluster recently, but he got his price up to almost 7K at one point because of how well he was playing. The freshman, scoring machine Blake Wesley, his price at 6K. That's pretty interesting. He took a tumble from the Virginia Tech game from 6'9" to 6K. So going against Bama, he's going to be in a much better pace for his skill set. The shot volume is still going to be there. He took 17 shots the other day against Rutgers. It was yesterday. I just can't. My days are blending together. So I think he's a good GPP spot too. But for me, I'm really honing in on Atkinson, I think, and wanting to go back to him and hope that he's not going to do like a 13 fantasy point game like he did to me. Cost me Mania, one of the Mass Mania slates. So I'm trying to have a short memory there. But I definitely like Notre Dame for DFS purposes more than I thought I would originally. I was just so hyper focused on Rutgers against them. And then on the Bama side, it's the same spiel. I should just record myself saying it, but the prices for them are really where they should be. Keon Ellis 7'6" might even be a little overpriced. Javon Quinterly at 6'9" is probably pretty fair for him. Shackelford at 7'2". We know he's capable of putting up 40, but there's just, to me, the upside's not there because all these guys are going to hit. They're like the Villanova guards for me. They're going to be between 27 to 33-ish fantasy points, and that's going to put them at, cash value, and that's fine. It's just the opportunity cost. I think with this slate, with how large it is, we don't have to, necessarily go and spend that in a spot where, it's a fine matchup, but there's just some really other juicier, spots. There's guys under 7-6 for Keon Ellis that I like better, and I think have, just as much upside, if not more, and without sacrificing, a floor. And if I save some money and not have to play, a bunch of sub 4 or 5 guys, which we know have landmine potential, then that's even better for me. I do have interest GPP wise for Charles Bediako, because I think even as a freshman, he's or a youngster, I should say, he's tougher than any, front court player to me on Notre Dame. So if he doesn't foul, I think he could have a really nice game where he collects quite a bit of rebounds off all of these jumpers I'm expecting to see from the Notre Dame side, long 2s, 3s that are going to clang off. So I do like him at 4.7. I would have liked to have seen him a little cheaper, and I like to play around with MME stuff. I'll throw James Rojas in one. Gurley, Rojas has been actually pretty decent as a min price guy. He's 3.2 now. So I'll play around and get some exposure to the Bama value. But yeah, for me, I'm pretty steadfast in that I'm going to continue fading Quinterly Ellis and Shackelford just because the prices, they don't offer me a lot of upside. What do you think?
I actually think Notre Dame might be able to compete in this one. They can match them in the backcourt, and Notre Dame kind of can get out physical, which we saw Rutgers do that a little bit on the offensive end. They just couldn't get a stop defensively. And Bama's not a team that's going to do that. So I think they can compete a little bit here. And yeah, the first thing I looked at in this matchup is you always look at the opposing big men, and bigs versus Bama is a real thing. Paul Atkinson is a pretty active and fantasy friendly player when he's engaged, and he has been a little more engaged. He played over 30 minutes against Rutgers and had a pretty decent performance. So great spot for him. Love the price. So Paul Atkinson is someone I'm trying to prioritize. But even if you wanted to pivot off him to Blake Wesley, I think this is a really good bounce back spot for Blake Wesley as well. We saw him struggle a lot against Rutgers throughout that game. But this is going to be a much more friendly game flow for Blake Wesley's type of game, and we've seen him have pretty massive upside in the high 30s. I think he put up 40 a couple times as well. He's probably their most aggressive player, and maybe overall most offensively talented. And we know Bama's going to want to get up and down the court. Notre Dame can certainly run with them, and maybe this is Blake Wesley's kind of game. But I kind of have Paul Atkinson 1A and Wesley 1B there. I slight lean towards Atkinson if you're going to choose between the two. And yeah, like you said on the Bama side, they're priced pretty fairly. I do like Shackelford the most because I think he has the most upside just because he's going to take a ton of shots this game. But his rebounding rates have been down recently. He was rebounding pretty well in the beginning of the season, which made me more comfortable playing him. But if he's only going to get 2 or 3 rebounds and you're going to have to just bank on him getting hot from 3, it's not somebody you really get excited about for paying $7,200 for. So like you said, they have 4 guards. They play similar minutes. They kind of cannibalize each other. When you're looking, especially on a larger slate, you want to avoid those type of landmines. You want safer guys who are going to play the whole game, have primary usage, stuff the stat sheet in all different categories. I don't know if any of these guys kind of fit that mold. So more GPP plays for me, but the main spots I'm attacking here are going to be either Atkinson or Wesley for sure.
Agreed. All right. So moving on, Virginia Tech versus Texas. Texas -1, a low total 123.5. Both teams in the 340s for tempo ranking. So this is one that obviously I'm really pushing for that Virginia Tech upset. I think with the bracket now opening up with that massive St. Peter's dub, there's a nice little road for them to possibly make it if they can get past Texas. But as far as DFS goes, this is a spot where I probably won't go to. I really, when it comes to Kive Luma and Justin Mutz, I like both. I've done well with both throughout the season. They're both pushing, knocking on the door of 8K, and against Texas, the opportunity cost is tough there. I think Much more so than Aluma in a game like this could still come through because he's going to be able to, slap some steals, blocks, get some rebounds. He runs that kind of point forward spot. So when guys like Maddox, Couture, and Murphy are hitting threes, he's typically the one getting those dimes, which is nice. It makes his upside nice and high. And he doesn't have to score more than, 5 or 6 real points. So I still like him for GPPs here because I've seen some Texas games where they're higher scoring than we thought. And all of a sudden they're in the 80s. And we're like, whoa, where did this come from? So there's definitely some worthwhile options. But I'm not going to be, prioritizing them. And I think Storm Murphy 4-7 is more like a guy you fall into at the end. You need a value play and you like the rest of your 7, you plug him in. Maddox at 4-2 is probably priced out now because his minutes are going to fluctuate. Padula has been really good about just getting 4X, whatever his sub 4K tag is. So I don't mind him. And then you have Couture there at 5-8 after that monster game he just had. I would doubt that would repeat here in this spot. So at 5-8, I think we can probably get away from him as well. And then on the Texas side, Timmy Allen has been really good to us throughout the season. He's been kind of the one constant for DFS for this team. Sometimes it's been Christian Bishop, sometimes Marcus Carr, Andrew Jones, Courtney Ramey. They're all kind of inconsistent. But the problem with Allen is, of course, they've got him up to 7-3. We were had him at 5-8, 6-2. Like, those are good prices for Timmy because, he'll still be in that like mid to late 20 score typically now that he's 7-3. We need him to get over the 30 hump there. And I don't know that he would necessarily get there because the rebounds are going to be tough to come by. And then same thing, Courtney Ramey's up over 5-4 now. So he's not living in that 4-5, 4-7 range where, again, you just kind of play him when he's in that price point. Marcus Carr at 5-7, once upon a time, just last year, if he would have been 5-7, we would have been falling all over ourselves and you would have been like 90% on a slate like this, but this doesn't have that role this year with this team. It's not Minnesota. Christian Bishop at 5'9", that's probably high. Andrew Jones. So again, this game, a good real life one. I'm obviously going to be watching closely because I'm going to be rooting for this Tech upset, see if we can get that Final Four magical run that I've predicted for them on track. But DFS wise, I don't have a lot of interest. A game like this could certainly have a lot of rebounds, so there is that upside. But I think the lack of scoring overall just caps the upside for these prices. What say you?
So these two teams have to be super excited to see Kentucky fall early, right?
Oh yeah.
And both of these teams are capable of making a run, and Purdue is susceptible to an upset in the next round. So from a bracket tournament perspective, this is actually a really important game in my opinion. From a fantasy perspective, I don't think we have to spend too much time on it because this is a complete pass. The only way I'd be interested in anybody is that they're super cheap. Like if we see like a 3-7 Courtney Ramey, like we've seen in the past, or like a 4-6 Marcus Carr. But everybody's priced pretty fairly, and the game flow is not going to be fantasy friendly. So I don't even think we need to talk anymore about it. It's just a complete pass at this point in a 15 game slate. Yeah.
So moving on, Chattanooga got their mocks versus Illinois. It's DK has it at -8 now, so that's gone up a little bit. I think it was like 7.5, 135.5 total.
I actually got it at 6.5. Walt, you believe that?
Oh, okay, yeah. See, look at that. Yeah. Illinois 178, Chattanooga 303. Kick us off because I know we are definitely divided on this game, and I'm starting to think more like Chattanooga may not win, but DK tempted me now because they gave me some pretty cheap prices on these mocks. A 6K Malachi Smith. Who am I to not play Malachi Smith, one of my mid-major darlings, at 6K, regardless of who he's playing? So why don't you kick us off here? But just a sneak peek on my end, I'm going to be playing some Chattanooga guys.
And it's not a bad spot to play them. I just get the thing. I haven't had time to completely dive in and build my lineups yet, but I'm noticing a lot of guys I like in that 6K range, like a Swain, like a Malachi Smith, like a Paul Atkinson, like a Wesley, and you're gonna have to choose, right? Malachi Smith is a great play here at 6K, but if I have to choose, I don't know because he's gonna have Trent Frazier guarding him the whole game. It's kind of it might be the same type of position I had against Shireman, which probably didn't even work out. But, Justin Minaya is a great defender. He had him chasing him around all game, made it a little difficult. Maybe not in the beginning, but it wore on him towards the end where he kind of faded out. It could see the similar type of thing here at Malachi Smith. But yeah, he's too cheap. Like you said, he's too cheap. Ball's going to be in his hands a lot. He's their primary ball handler. He's a great player. He averages over 36 fantasy points a game. And And so 6K is definitely a juicy price for Malachi. And even Jean Baptiste here, right? He's 5,100. That's too cheap for him. He's more of a scorer, I guess, for them. He doesn't have the same peripherals that Malachi Smith can put up, but 51 is in that value range, and he's their second/third option if you count D'Souza. At 5,100, that's too cheap. And it's not like this game's going to be slow paced. It only can get up and down the court. He is in the same price range as Andre Curbelo. So I wanted to ask you how you were going to attack Curbelo, if you're going to stay on that train. His minutes have been on the trending upward. It's tournament time. I think he's going to, kind of start pushing towards that 30 minutes a game, just because of how skilled he is, how important he is to that team. And the only way Illinois is going to make a run in this tournament is if Curbelo is playing well. I'm on the Illinois side here, but the line's only 8. It's probably going to be a close game. So they're going to maybe need Curbelo's ball handling skills down the stretch here if it's a closer game. So he's someone I'm looking at as well. But my favorite play here, and I'm sure you're anticipating it because I've harped the multiple times me and you have talked throughout the last week, is the main reason I like Illinois is because Chattanooga isn't great at defending the post or on the glass. So Kofi Cockburn, I think, is in a smash spot here. I think they try to get him involved early and often. I do worry about fouls. You always have to worry about fouls with Kofi. But if I have to choose between a Walker Kessler and a Kofi for my pay-up, I'm going to lean towards Kofi just because I don't think Silvio D'Souza has the size to stay with him. And, maybe the mocks think that D'Souza can stay with him and they don't bring a double team. That makes me like the spot even more for Kofi. But yeah, those are other than that, I think Grandison is expected to play. So that kind of bumps down the Coleman Hawkins love that he's kind of been getting more minutes. They're going to probably split more time. I don't think Hawkins is going to come out of the rotation. I think it's going to be more of a between him, Williams, and Grandison, more of a split there. But that just is not fun for fantasy purposes. So all of them are off my radar now. But it's more Curbelo and Kofi, and then Jean Baptiste and Malachi Smith on the Chattanooga side. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty lockstep there. That 6K for Malachi is just it's going to be tough to get away from. Right. He's playing almost 90% of the team's minutes, 27.7% usage rate, 28% shot rate. He's making 42% of his threes. So he's making Jean Baptiste more known as a scorer, like you said, and kind of almost not quite a 3-point specialist, but that's a lot of what he does. He's taken 223 attempts. He's making 37%. So Malachi's made a little more with 136 attempts. At least percentage wise. And yeah, he's a really gifted scorer, draws about 5 fouls per 40. So yeah, he'll have, like you said, probably Frazier on him, but maybe you can do enough to kind of, get him into foul trouble, pull a James Harden on him, do the little fake and fall leg out thing. I don't know. But I'm going to be on him. I definitely don't think I don't think I'm disciplined enough to fade him here at that price. And then I'd probably lean Jean Baptiste more for GPPs. 5-1's a tempting price, but, we could see him pull kind of an Ali type of game where, the shots aren't, if they're not falling, he's not going to do enough of other stuff against a team like this, where with Ali, he wasn't getting the rebounds and some of these other secondary stats that he had against MAC teams, and he just didn't pay off at the 5K. So I do have that concern for Baptiste a little bit, but I'd definitely I'd be able to use him in a GPP. And D'Souza at 5K, I think, is worth some exposure to. Definitely couldn't see myself doing it in my main, because he does have a 5.7 fouls per 40 rate. In conference play, that number ballooned up over 6. So going up against Kofi Cockburn, a player that draws, his rate is like top 5, over 7 fouls per 40, which I know is top 5 for sure. So, D'Souza will get the first crack at it, but he'll probably end up getting 2 fouls. Like, that seems inevitable. I do think that the Chattanooga guards will try to drive in and bait Kofi a little bit, try to go for a highlight block. And if they can get him, out of every 3 block attempts, if they can draw 1 foul there, we can maybe get him sitting real fast. And if that happens, then they'll have free reign to just, drive down the middle. So that's got to be clearly the game plan, is to, on their side, get Kofi in foul trouble. On the Illini side, sit down D'Souza, because after D'Souza, they don't, they think he's short at 6'9". He's 250. He's a bulk, but they don't have anyone, any taller than that. So if he goes down with fouls, they're really in trouble. And then, with Grandison coming back, that's tough for Hawkins. I don't really have much interest in any of the secondary guys now. Plummer has really, obviously we know he can get hot at any time and he'll chuck it. But now that Curbelo is starting to ascend back towards that level of playing closer to 30, you had mentioned that he played 27 last game, 22 against Iowa. He has had, or in those 2 games, he scored almost 30 fantasy points in both, despite making only 5 of his 19 shot attempts in those 2 games, 1 of 5 from long range. So shots aren't there. He had 5 turnovers in those games. That's something that happens to him. He gets charges and he turns the ball over, but he's got a really high assist rate. He rebounds pretty well for a guy his size. Is very active. He gets steals, blocks. 5K still on the cheap side for him. I would have certainly preferred it to be, 4-5 again, but after 2 straight games of almost 30, we knew it was coming up. It probably didn't come up high enough. So they're going to have to have him. They're going to need his scoring. It looks like to me now that he's playing those upper tier, 27, 22 minutes, he's healthy enough to go. They've been saving him and, wanting him to get fully healthy and kind of doing the whole San Antonio Spurs thing, resting him in games that, because they knew they were going to make the tournament. Now that there is a do or die situation, no tomorrow, win now or don't, and they're going to have to play him a lot. So I could see Curbelo playing a lot. I could see this game be one of those ones that maybe trends towards overtime potentially. Always difficult to try to predict overtime, but I could see this one being on the close side for at least a while and Curbelo racking up those stats with that extra time. So I am leaning towards him over Kofi just because I'm kind of pushing towards this balance build, because on this slate, I like the mid-range option. I feel more comfortable going balanced and I like them a little bit more. I felt I had to have a pay up like KJ Williams. I thought was going to do a lot better. Obviously 30 was fine, but it wasn't quite enough for what his price was. And I should have paid up for someone else, but I don't have any feelings like that with the pay ups today. I mean, Kofi could definitely pop off, like you said. Kessler, but I feel like I could be okay fading those guys if I get my mid-range right, because there's so many plethora of options. So I'm leaning towards Curbelo, and then on the Chattanooga side, it's Malachi. And if those two want to go, shot for shot in mano a mano, I'll be super happy. I still think the mocks, they could pull it off here, but they're going to have to shoot, lights out. They're going to have to really make a lot of shots. Longwood to have any chance at, covering today / competing with the Vols, we're going to have to make shots, and they just couldn't do it. The defense was too tough. So we'll see how the Illini show up here. Make Scott TSU happy. All right, next game, CS Fullerton versus Duke. Duke does, the pressure's off now. Duke doesn't, there's a 2 seed went down. So this is a spot where I would have, thought Duke could potentially lose, but probably not to Fullerton. It's minus 18.5, 145.5, or 145.5 of total, 150 tempo ranking, and Fullerton 238. I will start with the Fullerton side just because I'm sure people aren't, necessarily familiar with a team from the Big West. They typically start the following as their starting 5. EJ Anasicki, who, if you recognize that name, he originally was a big stud at Sacred Heart. He went to the higher level, played for the Vols, didn't work out for him, couldn't get minutes, transferred back down to a low major, mid-major. He's back to being a stud again, so he's good. Yeah, he's really good. People that remember
New Jersey guy.
Oh, okay, that's Sacred Heart is out there, or?
Yeah, it's Connecticut. So that's
Connecticut.
close.
Okay.
But he went to high school in New Jersey.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so he's really good. So people that recognize that name will probably think, "Oh, he was a scrub on the Vols." What? Well, don't be fooled. He is really good at this level.
No, he's good.
And I think he, given the opportunity, he could do some damage. Damari Milstead is their another starter. He is a guy that played. You guys might remember that name too. Played for San Fran and Grand Canyon, and I believe the Grand Canyon team he was on actually did make the tournament for one of those seasons. So he's actually pretty decent. Latrell Wrightsell, Torrey San Antonio, and Vincent Lee. They do run a pretty tight rotation of about 8 guys typically. Sometimes you'll see, that number be 7. So these starters are going to play a lot. Anasicki, who barely played ever for the Vols, he is a guy that they're going to run, and he has a shot rate over 25%, use rate over 26%. And he plays about 83% of the team's minutes. During the conference games, he was playing all but 3 minutes a game. So he's going to play a whole lot. He's going to take a ton of shots. He's very good at getting to the foul line. So I could see him potentially, getting some of these Duke guys into foul trouble, not wilting in the moment, even though he didn't play a ton for the Vols. That little bit experience at the high major level certainly helps. He's had games where he had over 20 rebounds. He's had games where he scored over 30 real points. He's just all around a really good player. So I like him against Duke. One thing that was kind of a sneaky option. He's only 6'8" too, by the way. One of the things that we were able to do early in the season during the non-con, when Duke was playing Lafayette and some of these other low major teams, we noticed that their defense, being young, they don't show up for every possession. So we were able to target some of the cheaper low major guys at low ownership, and they were paying off for us. So I think, we can definitely get away with running Usc potentially, depending on how much he's going to be hyped up beyond just here, on RG and all these other sites. But another guy in that mid-range 6 to 7K range that I'm just loading up, and I'm gonna roll him out against Duke. I feel pretty comfortable that he's gonna play. He's the type of guy that they're gonna rely on. This bench is so lean that even if he gets into foul trouble, I feel like they're still going to roll him. I'd have to check the two foul participation number to confirm that. But looking at their rotation, you can feel pretty good about that. And Damari Milstead at 6K, I think is definitely in play as well. If EJ ends up being more chalky, then going to Milstead might make a little bit of sense, where he does have a 23.6% shot rate, 20% assist rate, and he's making about 38% of his threes. He has a steal rate approaching 4%. So he could even get some, steals off of some of these Duke ball handlers, which you noted on Twitter when you were doing your tourney takes and stuff, teams without true point guards, and Duke was one that you highlighted, and that could be a problem going up against a true veteran like Damari Milstead, who I'd have to look it up later. Man, that Grand Canyon team was pretty decent. I think it was like 2019. They did make the tournament. Okay, they played West Virginia. Maybe that was in the CBI though. But yeah, I think he could give problems to a team like Duke without a true point. And Banchero is going to have to probably play, would you say, maybe like a point forward spot where he's going to have to maybe initiate the offense, if Fullerton's able to kind of smack them in the mouth. That game against Long Beach State, where I thought Beach would win, they really played them very tight.
They shot the lights out that game.
Yeah, man, they were crushing it. 50% on 2-point field goals, 55% on 3-point field goals. So if they can shoot anywhere near that level, they're going to be in this game, I feel. And in that game, also, EJ got to the foul line 14 times. He's really good at racking up free throws and drawing fouls. So that's my take on Fullerton. As far as Duke goes, I mean, at this point, everybody knows what they're about. Banchero is a very solid player, 9.2. It's tough. I haven't played him a lot this year when he's over 9K because, he seems to live in that 35-ish range. But when he dips under 9K, I definitely like it. And he's had a couple 40s recently too. So it's not like he can't pay off this 9.2, especially against a team like Fullerton. But I just feel like, that the opportunity cost there, you make a compelling case for Kofi for 100 less. I would go there. I would probably go Kessler over him. So that's where I'm looking at in terms of pay ups. Mark Williams at 8.5. You'd think he'd crush a front court like this, but the paying up over 8K for Mark Williams is done for me. If he goes off tomorrow, whatever, I can't do it. It's just fouls, minutes. Shit, that one game I did use him. He was standing around inexplicably. That was the most frustrating part for me. So kind of tough to get there. AJ Green's been hot, or it's AJ Green. AJ Griffin's been hot, but 6'5". Trevor Keels at 6'6". Like, I could see him really turning it on for the tournament. He feels like a player that's going to drag them to the Elite Eight, play his best basketball, and suddenly he's a lottery pick because of the tournament performance. Like, that wouldn't shock me. Wendell Moore at 8.2 feels too expensive. And then, Theo John, Jeremy Roach. It's tough to get behind using them because Roach will have a pop-off game once in a while, maybe once every 9 games, and he just had one, so I'm not going to go back there and expect anything. So the Duke side doesn't really excite me too much because of their pricing. I'm definitely looking more towards the Fullerton side. So what do you think?
Yeah, so this has kind of been the story with Duke all year. After the first few weeks is that DraftKings just overpriced them for pretty much the entire year. There were some times where we can get Banchero a little cheaper. Wendell Moore, a couple of times we can get him a little cheaper, but for the most part, they've been overpriced all year. They're overpriced on this slate as well. Looking at 15 games, you don't want to overpay for anybody, so you're probably going to want to stay away from the Duke side, even though this is a smash spot for Banchero. But like you said, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm leaning. Maybe I need to go balanced, and also if you look at the pay-up spots, I'd rather play Kofi and Kessler over him, I think. But yeah, I mean, the first person you mentioned was the guy that I had circled was EJ Usc. And I do worry about him in this matchup just because Duke's interior defense is pretty good with Mark Williams and Theo John inside there. We're probably going to get the assignment. But he's really skilled. He has great moves in the post. He's not just a guy that's going to beat up on the low major conference foes that Fullerton plays against. He can do some work against Mark Williams or Theo John as well. He's that skilled. So he's definitely underpriced here at 6,800. Depends how my roster my roster build is gonna go, but he's definitely somebody that I'm trying to prioritize. I do want to look more into how he performed earlier in the season, and maybe a little worried about him fouling if he has to, switch off onto Boncaro, or maybe they're throwing a lot of alley-oops to Mark Williams and he gets a foul there or on the offensive glass. But so it does worry me a little bit, but he's definitely in a really good spot. Milstead, I don't know if I'm going to like I said before, that 6K range, that there's so many options, right? You have Swain, Malachi Smith, Wesley. I think Milstead's probably on the more towards the bottom of that list for me, whereas like Malachi Smith and Paul Atkinson are more towards the top. So and Swain even too. So I have to choose. I'm probably not going to go the Milstead route, but you make very valid points. He's a very good play. If they're going to stay in this game, he has to play well. He has to shoot well. So if you're thinking Fullerton's going to compete here, then I don't mind going there. But Anosicki's the play on the Fullerton side in this game for sure.
Yeah, and they had some decent games against upper tier comp. I mean, they had a close loss against San Diego State. He didn't perform very, very well there. But the Aztecs defense, we know what that's about. He did perform well in a 13-point loss to Wyoming. Going against EK there, he had 19 and 4. So not the rebounds weren't there, but he scored 19.
30% usage rate.
Yeah, so he did well against them. He had a nice game against Santa Clara. We know Santa Clara is, they're not a pushover team by any means. And then
6 offensive boards there.
Yeah. So it's kind of hit or miss there. I think he'll score a lot of real. It's just like, how much secondary, peripheral stats will he be able to pad with the score? Because if he scores like 21 real, but he's got no peripherals, it might be kind of tough. But it's going to be tough to get away from him for sure, because we've been able to use guys like that against Duke much cheaper, and it's come through for us. So, yeah. All right, moving on. Iowa State versus LSU. We have LSU -4. Maybe not a surprisingly low total, but 128.5. 93 Temple ranking for LSU, 230 for Iowa State. This is one when the pairing came out that I felt out of all the matchups, I felt the most befuddled by this. Like, these two teams match up so oddly to me, and obviously we know Will Wade, the American gangster, is gone, and we don't know if LSU is going to be like, just mailing it in, don't care, or they're going to show out, or Terry Eason's going to be playing for a pro contract like some people say, or maybe he's going to transfer and come home to the Huskies. Yeah, maybe, but not. So I just don't know what to expect from them. And Iowa State, I feel like, this could be an Isaiah Brockington game where nobody's on him, and he's just, he puts up one of those 45s, and it's like, damn, we should have played Brockington. He's almost 8K. He's not going to be owned. So it feels like it might be a decent spot for him going up against this young LSU group that doesn't have their head coach. So what do you think?
Yeah. So, like you said, these teams match up very weirdly together. They both play very similar styles, right? They're defensively, they're kind of get in your shirt, pressure defense, deny passing lanes, try to force turnovers, play pretty tough defensively. And both offenses are a little sketchy. LSU has a slight advantage just because they have a better interior, whereas Iowa State focuses on Brockington, making plays and taking 20 shots. And then you also have Tyrese Hunter, who, for the most part, I mean, he has his freshman woes, but for the most part, he's a pretty solid playmaker, but he does disappear at times. So, I mean, this isn't the greatest fantasy environment. There may be a lot of turnovers, so there could be steals to go around. But overall, not the greatest fantasy environment. Terry Easton is interesting at 8,300. We've seen him have massive ceiling, and without the head coach, who's been keeping him on the bench the whole year, this could be like a massive FU spot in the tournament where he's just playing for, like you said, his NBA stock, and he just kind of goes nuts and takes over 20 shots. It's definitely possible. And Iowa State's interior defense isn't that great. To begin with, it's just, teams usually struggle because of the pressure to get the ball inside. And yeah, I mean, Brockington as well. He's one of those guys that, him and Easton, I seem to never get right when I play them in fantasy purposes is when I play them, they have that floor 27-point game. And when I don't, I see somebody passing me in the standings where they both put up 49 fantasy points. I don't know if this is the matchup to attack. They're both fairly priced. So I think there's better games in this 15-game slate that I'd rather gravitate to just because I'm scared of those floor games. Value-wise, honestly, I don't really see much value here. Aljaz Kunk, maybe, since his minutes have been increasing recently. You have Kalshar here, who's strictly a three-point shooter, and that's typically not where you look for it in fantasy purposes. But we've seen him have a decent ceiling when he can get hot. But again, this is not the game environment for him to excel at. And those LSU guards, they're all fairly priced. I mean, we used to use Gaines a lot when Pinson goes out, but Pinson's back and he's back up to 6,500. So yeah, I'm not super excited about this. I think the matchup's a little weird. We don't know LSU's motivation. In my bracket, and I haven't made a bet yet, but I saw the line get up to 4. I'm probably going to be on the Iowa State side, just because these teams are so similar that I think they kind of just play each other really tough. But yeah, I mean, I'm not super excited fantasy-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's. I think for me, it would just be like a GPP throw in of Brockington, because, like I said, I could see him, putting up one of those classic low-owned, 50s that he's capable of, and then
he does it in weird matchups too, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's always in ones you wouldn't expect. You'd be
it's like against Texas or West Virginia or somebody,
Yeah, he's done it a couple of times this year, and especially recently. So I definitely want some exposure, but I'm not going to build around him. And then Eason, I usually always have him in. I mean, I play him a lot in my main, but I'm probably not going there this time unless, like you alluded to, maybe he gets a start here. If he were to be, we get the news that he's starting, I'm going to be looking to swap to a lot more, because that means, that 30 plus minute mark that I've been harping about all year with his high fantasy point per minute number. He has the potential to put up a 50 point, just slate melting performance of all the tournament. And at 8.3, that would be considered low for him, because we know how he's able to put up, 30 in 22 minutes. So if we can get him starting and playing big minutes, I think he can do some damage. So something worth monitoring, but as of right now, it's definitely not, my priority. Wright State versus Arizona. We have Arizona minus 21.5. A 156.5 total. Arizona's 8th in tempo ranking, Wright State 85th. They're fresh off that win over Bryant. Very fast-paced matchup as expected. The prices on the Wright State guys are so silly cheap that I feel the trap being set by DraftKings here, and I say that facetiously, but we know that with how cheap they are, we're going to probably see a lot of ownership. We're going to play some, and there's going to be some landmines going up against Arizona here. The nice thing about Wright State is that, the top 3, Tanner Holden, Grant Basile, and Trey Calvin, are so talented that even in a tough matchup, they'll probably volume their way to value at these prices, regardless of, if they get blown out. So Holden at 5'8" is the first one. I'm just like, whoa, really interested there, obviously, especially after what he did last game and what he's done this season. Grant Basile at 6'2", I think, is more fadeable. He's probably looking at some foul trouble going up against that front court that is a hell of a lot tougher than him. He does bang threes, so if Coloco's on him, he could win that matchup, just, having him chase him around the court. But I definitely have concern about him more. And then Trey Calvin at 5'2" is definitely in play. Finke is there at 5'5" more than Calvin. That's an easy fade. It's probably Holden and Calvin. Do I want to play both? Maybe not, but it's going to be tough not to have exposure to them at that price point, because, that offense for Wright State it's been really good. And granted, they haven't, they're playing a conference in the horizon that was kind of down. You can look to some other games early in the year to maybe get an idea. They had a really rough stretch to start the year. They lost to teams like Marshall, George Washington, James Madison. They got just waxed by Purdue. In that game, though, Trey Calvin had 21. Kind of shows you guards against Purdue before we even knew it. And Tanner Holden had 17 and 7 there. Basile really struggled. So that, Purdue's front court tough. Grant struggled. Arizona's front court tough. Grant, I think I'm kind of getting at here, might struggle. So I'm looking at Calvin and Holden, probably using one of them in my main, and they fit perfectly in a balanced build at those price points. That 5K to probably like 7.5 range is just so full of heat that I don't know if we even need to go to Kessler, Kofi, Banchero, any of those guys. So that's where I'm at with Wright State. Definitely going to still use them. Kind of makes me feel like the game last year with Hartford. Tough spot for them. They had two really severely underpriced players in Williams and Carter, and they ended up, I believe, it was against Baylor. They got crushed, but both of those guys made value anyways. Austin Williams had a really nice game. I remember him scoring like 20. Tracy Carter had a bunch of peripherals, so I could see that type of outcome here in this spot, even though it's a tougher matchup on paper. For the Arizona side, I typically, I don't necessarily have to worry. They're one of the few teams I worried about blowouts with this year because they did sit their guys, but they're without Krisa. It's the tournament. You can't afford to be resting guys really. You saw Kansas in a blowout tonight. They were playing their starters deep into the game. So you can, use guys like Azula, Tubelis, at 7-1. Terry at 6K is pretty intriguing. Kier is going to get, a bunch of minutes. He's 5-1. Pele Larson at 4.8. He's going to play a bunch. If you want to go super galaxy brain, Balo at 4.9 will probably have a ton of rebounds depending on how many minutes he gets. And then this is definitely the type of pace that Benny Mathurin, excels in. He's there at 7.8 though. So 7.8 for him, Koloko 7.5, Tubelis at 7.1. We've been seeing a lot of chalk Tubelis lately, so he would probably be highly owned. I kind of have interest though in Dallin Terry at 6K. I really like what we saw out of him recently in the Pac-12 tourney. And I think without Krisa, his overall usage and opportunity for assists and other stats really raises, which we saw. So what do you do with a game like this where everybody projects nuclear?
Yeah, this is definitely a fantasy friendly environment. And in a large 15 game slate where you want to avoid landmines, you want to try to stick to these high total fantasy friendly games, and this is definitely one of them. And like you said, there's a lot of underpriced guys, so there's definitely options. Basili on Wright State is somebody that I'm going to fade. He's definitely way too cheap.
Yeah.
And you see that, like, if you just sort by fantasy points per game, you see a 36.7 there, and you're like, whoa. But he's going against probably the best defensive front court in the entire nation. So I think he's going to struggle against the size and length of this team. And, he actually didn't have a great game against Bryant. I think he has a worse one here. So definitely fade alert there. I'd much rather be interested in Calvin and Holden. Holden just went nuclear last game. Yeah. But yeah, teams, perimeter players have much more success against Arizona than front court players. So definitely leaning towards them if I'm taking somebody from the Wright State side. On the Arizona side, I'm on the same boat as you. I like Dallin Terry the best. I think in kind of a more higher paced game, he's kind of the one that leads transition and can kind of rack up a ton of assists and rebounds as well, and steals. He's been shooting a little bit more recently since Chris has been out. He actually just helped me take down the high dollar in the last slate before the tournament started. So he might have a special place in my heart just from recency bias. Other than him, I think Matherin's a little too expensive for me to play at 7.8. I'd rather see him in the low 7K. But Koloko and Tubelis are both in smash spots here. Wright State, I don't think has the size. I don't think Basili has the speed or the size to stay with any of them. They work really well together inside out through the post. Koloko can have a block party here. Tubelis, we've seen him have really high upside. These are just really good spots for both of them. So if you're looking in that low 7K range, I would gravitate towards each of those guys as well. But maybe we keep talking about these 6K players. Maybe you just run a bunch of 6K players out in this slate, right? Dallin Terry, Azar Swain, Paul Atkinson, Blake Wesley, Malachi Smith. You just run all of them out. And get super, super as balanced as you can. Maybe that's the way. Maybe that's the move.
Yeah, I'm looking at one with Atkinson, Malachi Swain, like you said, maybe Calvin or Holden, deciding on one of them, Curbelo, and that allows you to get in two guys over 7.5. It's kind of like, like I said, then you avoid having to take anyone under 5K with a build like that, and that's pretty damn strong. So especially when we get into this next game here, talking about UAB versus Houston. Houston minus 8.5, 136 total, 333 tempo ranking for Houston. UAB 80th. We have here our guy, or everybody's guy, because I didn't realize that Barstool was hyping Jelly Walker into the moon as well. So now a lot more people are familiar with him. He's not not my sneaky guy anymore. He's only 7'4" going against Houston, a typically tough defense, but he's exactly the type of player, a March hero, that is going to take a ton of shots. He's extremely good at scoring. He's very tough. Like, he gave the perfect interview after their win when they asked, like, who do you want to play? And he said he doesn't give a damn. Like, bring on anyone. They'll beat anyone. Like, he's ready to go. And 7'4" for his ability is really cheap. It's unfortunate that they're getting this matchup against Houston because they are so well coached. They are so good defensively. And despite losing, Mark and Saucer, their two best guards, Fabian White's dealing with back tightness, even though he played how many minutes did he have? He had 29 minutes against Memphis, played really well, 20-3. I mean, he's probably going to be fine, but you never know. Something like that could flare up. He's going to be harassed by guys like, Shed and Taze Moore, who's a little bigger than him. Well, everyone's bigger than him, I guess. And that definitely worries me, but again, not sure I have the ability to get away from somebody that I just have followed all season long, is relatively underpriced, and in a do or die situation, I'm going to plant my flag with a player like that. And I think Houston has shown that despite, how good their defense is, their rotation is just, whether they want it to be or not, just so small because of these injuries that guys they're going to score against them. They're going to get worn down eventually. And that's what we're definitely going to see happen. And we saw, Tulane in a 20-point win there. Jalen Forbes had 19 and 7. Like, he couldn't hit any threes, but he was getting himself to the foul line, generating points. Jelly's going to get to the foul line, generate points. David Julius, I think they played Cincinnati 3 times. He was pretty bad in 2 of them, but there was a game I believe Julius had like 25 or 26 or something like that. So that just shows you or gives you hope. There was a game against SMU. Kendrick had 22. So, I mean, lead guards definitely can work this matchup. And I think Houston might get a little tired trying to chase him around. So I definitely feel like this is a great spot to use him just because of his price. If they would have made him like 8.5, like they had been doing to Kendrick Davis all year, we could have easily gotten away. Just to run it down real quick, 33.2% usage rate. Coincidentally enough, 33.2% shot rate. His assist rate's over 31%, so he's dropping dimes as well. 2.5% steal rate. He draws about 5 fouls per 40. So if he can get those, Houston guys in foul trouble, we know they do that. And he has a 42% make rate from long range. So just 2 games ago with Houston, we saw 4 of their 5 starters have 2 fouls by the end of the first half, and 1 of them had 3. So they're having to go to their bench with Ramon Walker and Juwan Roberts, who are both extremely talented, don't get me wrong, but I think Walker could end up, whoever guards him, getting them into foul trouble and just generating a ton of points at the foul line for us. So I feel like he has a safe floor here, regardless of how tough this Houston matchup is. So I was a little bit shocked to see it at first, and I was worried about it, but I've had time to kind of soak it in and play it through in my mind and research it. I think, he's in a great spot overall, just because it's March for him. On the Houston side, Fabian White's a tempting price at $7K. It's a little trappy because, those back injuries, back tightness, spasms, whatever you want to call them, they're tricky because he could come out and be just fine like we saw against Memphis, but, maybe he overextends himself on a rebound. Somebody, runs into him on a charge. A myriad of things could happen, and instantly, those flare up and he's got to leave the floor. So I don't think he's a main team play, even though he should be able to probably get KJ Buffin in foul trouble and really do some damage here. Overall, at least scoring the basketball, I do think he's more of a GPP play just because of that injury looming. Because I would hate to be cruising right along, get to the Houston game, you play Fabian, he scores 10 points in 3 minutes, you're feeling great, and then that back flares up and he can't play anymore, and then you're just like, damn, what happened? So I think you need to be a little bit on the safe side or err on the side of safety there with him. Josh Carlton at 6'3", that's an intriguing price, but he's GPP only for me because of his foul rate. Every time, and that's, the price is great. It's just for me personally. If you want to use Carlton, do it. And I'm speaking to everybody. For me, I can't seem to get him right, and that's dates back to UConn for years and years and years. Like he was having these stretches at UConn where he was putting up 35, 32, 34. It's like, well, shit, I guess I better try to use him now. And then that second I use him, he's picking up 4 fouls in the first half. So I will leave him to you guys to use if you want. Kyler Edwards at 8K is a little too expensive for me, even though the rotation's so short. Taze Moore at 7.2, that's probably paying for his ceiling. Shed at 7.5, same thing. And people don't realize this UAB Blazers team is not a scrub group on defense either. They've put up some pretty damn good games in terms of holding opponents, under a certain threshold. I know the Middle Tennessee game in triple overtime, nobody played defense there, but everybody was gassed out. They did a nice job against Louisiana Tech in the title game, and they've done really well. They force turnovers. They get steals. They hit threes, which is very important for this time of year. They have the sixth best 3-point efficiency per Ken Palm, and that's with Jelly Walker. Michael Ertl, who takes a ton of threes. Jamal Johnson, before he got hurt, was taking a ton of threes. They've got other guys shooting 35, 37%. So this team has the makings for an upset, regardless. I have Houston in this, serious player draft that I'm in. I did end up with Fabian White and Taze Moore because of the way the draft went. So for that, I want Houston to advance, but my heart, and I wrote about this, use your head, not your heart. My heart wants UAB to win. So I guess it's a win-win for me, because if Houston wins, then I get to advance my players along in that. But if UAB wins and Jelly Walker goes ham, I get to use him one more round in DFS. And if he goes ham, I probably did good that day. So this is one that's tough for me, because I know that there's many people picking the upset here. So there is, a decent chunk of people who believe they can do it. So, and you might be one of them. What do you think?
I think they can do it. And like you said, Jelly Walker is like the ultimate March Madness type of player that you can get behind and can lead a team to a run, right? You met, and like a perfect example is Timmy Allen today, right? Like,
yep.
They had no business winning that game, except the fact that he took 25 shots and put up 30 real, or what was it, 33 real points. He basically beat UConn single-handedly, and that's exactly something that Jelly Walker can do. So just from a basketball kind of matchup standpoint, it is a tough matchup for UAB. I'm not taking anything away from that. It's not going to be easy. Houston's super physical, great defensive team, really, really good on the glass. But this UAB team has some fight in them. They're physical themselves. And like you said, the way to beat Houston, right? Houston kind of packs things in and kind of walls off the paint. But defensively, you have to beat them over the top. I mean, Jelly Walker can do that. Ertl can do that. Even Quan Jackson can hit some shots, right? So it's really tough to pick UAB as a surefire upset here, but I think there is a possibility. And I think, like you said, that a lot's going to be on the line here. Ball's going to be in Jelly Walker's hands a lot. He can get to the foul line a ton. The usage is going to be there. The price is pretty favorable. He's definitely somebody that you can definitely fire up and have confidence behind, even in a tough matchup here. Other than that, Ertl is kind of cheap. He's just so 3-point reliant. So if he's not hitting his shots, you're going to get a floor game, and it's probably going to bust your lineups. But he's too cheap here at $5K. And then on the Houston, I think that's all I like on the UAB side. You probably don't want to play bigs against Houston. But on the Houston side,
certainly not KJ Buffin.
Yeah, that guy might play two minutes and have 5 fouls. And we rostered him when that happened before in a more friendly matchup for him. On the Houston side, like you said, Fabian White is underpriced here at $7K. But like, who knows what's going on with his back? Does he have flare-ups? If I had to choose, I'd rather play Jelly Walker over Fabian. Kyler's too expensive. Shed, it's hard because the Houston team is pretty balanced as far as production. It's not really one guy that's typically going off. I think Fabian White is the most consistent there, but he also does have a high foul rate. And he may be injured, may not be injured. He looked really good, as you said, in this last game. But, back injuries are tricky, so that kind of scares me a little bit. But, yeah, I think this sets up for a spot to attack Jelly Walker, and I hope people around the industry who are playing get scared of the Houston matchup. And I'm excited to see if they can pull up the upset here. I'll be rooting for him as well. I picked him in my bracket to win. Let's put it that way.
Let's go. All right. Man, I just made a lineup that I'm super excited about, by the way. We'll have to talk about that, which actually it's going to have to have one Wright State player. So I don't know if that's going to work, but it's because I was looking for my last piece and I think I might've found it. So this next game here is the Foster Lawyer Bowl. It's not him. But Davidson versus Michigan State. They have Spartans -1, a total of 141. Spartans 142 tempo ranking, Davidson 305. Definitely going to hear a lot of people talk about it as, Foster Loyer facing his former squad where he didn't, do a whole lot, and he's going to want to show out. Spartans are dealing with, injuries for Tyson Walker. He's been active. I don't know, the status of what's going to be with his ankle. We know that, they've had some injuries throughout. Hoggard was banged up there for a time in that last game, but then he fought through it and he crushed Purdue. He's only 5K, by the way, pretty decent price for him. So there's some nice options here on both sides, really. But I'm really going to be looking at Luka Brajkovic, who is 6'9", which might seem like a higher price to people who aren't used to paying attention to Davidson. But one, tried and true DVP spot this year has been against the Spartans as bigs, which Brajkovic, he has the ability to hit threes, but also, he makes his money on rebounds and putbacks, and he does some damage on the block. When people think of Izzo teams, the reputation is that their interior defense, is always stout and you don't want to target against them, but that just simply hasn't been the case this year. And targeting, primary Big Ten, guys all season long against them, whether it's Dickinson, Race Thompson had a good game, Johnny Harrar smacked them. Like, it's just been a really big cheat code. So I'm looking heavily, and my last piece, I had the 7K range for a forward. He's staring at me. I'm staring at him. I think Luka is going to be somebody that I'm going to have a lot of and run in my main lineup, because this seems like the matchup where, he's going to be able to do some really, intriguing things against this Spartans defense. Looking at rates, he does have a 24.1% usage rate, a 24.6% shot rate. As I mentioned, he's 6'10", 250. So he's, a tough kid, but he shoots 40% from long range on 85 attempts. Fully capable there. On 2-point field goals only, he's shooting 64%. So, he's getting a lot of good, bunny looks there. He blocks about 5% of his shots. His foul rate sits about 3, and he's drawing about 4 fouls per 40. His combined rebounding rate is up over 32%. So a lot to like about Brajkovic. He doesn't get the hype that the other, people always hammer home. Foster Loyer is such a good shooter. Michael Jones, in DFS, Haijun Lee gets a lot of hype. People don't really talk about Luka as much. And in years past, he was just a role player. Usually a cheap guy would come in and get a bunch of fouls. This year, he's really taken over as one of the, top 3 roles. His foul rate has been a career low this season, which is great to see. His first couple years on the team was around 5. His 3-point shooting is way up. His rebounding rate is up. Like, everything is up for him now that he's got an opportunity to be one of the leaders on their team. So I'm leaning him. I think that you could definitely play, Michael Jones at 5'6" because of his shot rate and his 3-point making. He's shooting about 43% from long range. He's, in there taking a big amount of threes. The Spartans 3-point defense has been adequate, but I don't think it's anything we need to avoid. So I do like him for GPPs. And then, I'll be interested to see how many play Loyer just for the narrative standpoint of it. And then, like I said, on the Spartan side, Hoggard, man, he's really cheap there at 5K. So that might be the decision for me is, do I want to go to AJ where I know he's going to play big minutes? Walker's kind of banged up. Or do I want to just say, you know what, I'm going to take Curbelo, who's probably going to be lower owned. It's March. They're going to use Curbelo, 30 plus minutes. I'm going to go there. So I think that's the main coin flip that I'm going to lose tomorrow. I'm not going to say, I'm going to, may say it because I've been losing coin flips left and right lately. So I'm bound to win one soon, but that'll be the one that I'm going to tilt a lot, I'm sure. Marcus Bingham has played really well. 6'3" is kind of a tough price. You do have Max Christie staring you down there at 4'7". My God, I want Max Christie. I want to use him because he should be able to do more. He's playing, 33-ish minutes a game. His role is secure. Izzo's just, I don't know if it's like, he went out and got this highly rated recruit and he's just, by damn it, he's going to play him no matter what. But it just doesn't do anything to make value ever. And it's so frustrating because he'll go out in there and put up 10 quick fantasy points. Then he'll go 20 minutes with nothing, then a little quick spurt. And all of a sudden, it's like, why couldn't he just do this the entire game? And I thought against Maryland when he had 30 that he might have woken up, but he hasn't. So definitely a lot of GPP value on the Spartans team that you can use. Like I said, mainly for me, I'm going to have to decide is AJ, Hogg there the play for me, or do I go Curbelo? As of now, I'm probably leaning Curbelo, but if you think AJ Hoggard's going to play, somewhere closer to the 34 minutes he just saw against Purdue. And that might've been more of a product of, Walker's being banged up and the fact that AJ was just killing them in the pick and roll. Or, if he's going to go back down to the 21, 22 minute mark, then I'm less interested. So we'll have to figure that out to make a proper decision. But what are you doing here for the Foster Lawyer Bowl?
So I really like Davidson in this spot. I think they match up with the Spartans very well. And I've talked about this on all the betting shows I've been on this week, is that I've been on the fade train on Michigan State down the stretch here. They've kind of been a dumpster fire as of late. I don't even think we need to talk about the Spartans from a fantasy perspective, just because Izzo's rotation, like even now, 35 games into the season, it's still a mess. Like you still don't know what's going to happen. I just did a little bit of research on Twitter, and it looks like Tyson Walker looks pretty good. He's been practicing, and he looks like he's a full go. Okay. So it's hard to bank on Hoggard getting that 30-plus minutes, even though he should. But do you trust Izzo? Yeah. He should be. Walt, do you trust Izzo? Like, no, you don't. Like, you don't want to have your main DFS lineup right on that, and he could just split them again and get 20 and 20, and then Hoggard's not going to hit value, right? Yeah. Like if it was guaranteed that Walker was out and Hoggard was going to get 35 minutes, that's a smash spot. He's such a great fantasy player. He's a great point guard. The whole offense runs through him when he's in the game, but it's more of a GPP type of play for me, just because of what I'm seeing from Tyson Walker practicing and being ready to go. On the Davidson side, I think all these guys should be priced more in the 7K range than the 6K range. So I think they're all a little underpriced. They all play 35 minutes. They're all highly used in the offense. And I'm on the same boat as you. My favorite is Luka down low. And he causes matchup problems for the Spartan team. And like you said, we've seen post defenders have successful fantasy performances against him, but he can also step out and hit the three where, somebody like Julius Marble or Sissoko is guarding him. They can't guard him out there. The only one who really can is Bingham. And we've seen Izzo play Bingham like 18 minutes a game at points. So yeah, he could have some advantages there. I love Lee too, but he's a little too 3-point reliant for me. Same thing. And Foster Lawyer, who knows what's going on with his minutes? It's been on the decline. He's been playing more in the 20s since he came back from injury. So that's a little risky for me. So the guy to be looking at is the same guy you would, Walt, and is Luka on the Davidson side. And I think that Davidson handles Michigan State fairly easily in this matchup, to be honest.
Like it. Yeah, I'm on the Davidson side there too. All right, moving on. We have 2 games left. Colgate versus Wisconsin. The Badgers are 8-point favorites. Total just a tick under 140. Badgers 210 tempo ranking, Colgate 163. Colgate, they had a really, fun game last year. They pushed Arkansas to the brink in the first half before eventually fading out. Everyone's back from that team except Jordan Burns, who of course was very good for them. But their offense has been phenomenal, especially from long range. They're actually the second most efficient team from long range per Ken Palm. So another team on the slate that's just really gifted from long range, whether that's, Tucker Richardson, Jack Ferguson, Nellie Cummings, Ryan Moffitt. They have a kid off the bench, Oliver Lynch-Daniels, who's shooting like 55% on 82 attempts. So they've got a lot of guys who are just are hitting quite a bit of threes, and that's going to keep them, I think, in the game with Wisconsin maybe for a little while. Their continuity, they got a bunch of seniors that have played together for a while. They have tournament exposures or experience. So I'm kind of intrigued to see if Colgate can, number one, cover and maybe even threaten to pull a victory off. Because Wisconsin, we know they have Brad Davison, but they're outside of him, the 3-point shooting isn't necessarily the most consistent in the conference of Big Ten. So I'm looking at their prices for Colgate, and there's definitely some spots I like. Jack Ferguson at 5K is interesting. He's going to play 30 plus. Tucker Richardson at 5'8". I think he's probably closer to a 7K player most games. You have Ryan Moffitt as a true value at 3.7, probably one of the best or top 3 values on the slate. He does have guard forward eligibility sitting there. Typically a guy that's going to hover around 20 fantasy points, and he's going to play roughly 28 to 30 minutes. So at 3.7, we'll probably see him draw quite a bit of ownership for those that are going to try to stuff in guys like, maybe Johnny Davis or Kofi and these different, pay up options. Moffitt's usage and shot rates are pretty low, in the mid 14, 15 range, but he has the 4th highest offensive rating in the country, takes a lot of clean looks when he's inside the arc, but he's a 45% 3-point shooter on 120 attempts. So he's nearly as automatic as a guy like Baylor Sherman when he's out there left alone. Really, really strong player. So at 3.7, yeah, he doesn't need usage. He's out there. He's going to be taking threes. He's so efficient that he doesn't need to have these high usage rate because he's going to be making most of his shots typically. Same can be said about Jack Ferguson. Tucker Richardson's more of a volume guy. Keegan Records is their primary big. And then Jeff Woodward is a 6'11" guy that I believe they use off the bench, who plays about 18 to 20 minutes that has a high usage rate. So I really like this Colgate team. I think you could use a myriad of them if you're not comfortable with, attacking Wright State against Arizona, because it could be a situation like with, Norfolk State today where guys just kind of were okay. Then you can look at Colgate because I do think that they can push Wisconsin here. And the Badgers defense has given up some, when I thought they would kind of shut other guys down, primary fantasy scorers, they've just gotten blown up by them. So I think you could use any of these guys to prioritize them or give you an order. I think Ryan Moffitt at the 3.7 is probably the priority play, just because if you do want to play that, high price guy. And then for me, Tucker Richardson, just the volume, I think he's really strong. Nelly Cummings, and then Jack Ferguson, and then probably Keegan Records somewhere down the list there. He probably wouldn't make my lineups, but I don't mind him at 5.4. And then Wisconsin, Johnny Davis there at 8.6. The Badgers will go as far as he can drag them. Tyler Wall is priced at 7K because, he has these games where he's got 4 steals, 10 rebounds, like his peripherals are strong. And then Brad Davison at 6.7. It's going to be tough to pay that price, but he's probably going to get a high volume of threes, because to keep up with this barrage of Colgate 3-point shooting, he's going to have to take a lot of threes and make them. Johnny will, of course, have to as well, but Davis is really their primary / best 3-point shooter. So I don't have a lot of interest on the Wisconsin side, just because I'm not trying to pay these 7K prices for Davison or Wall. And I don't mind Johnny Davis at 8.6, but I just feel like we can spend our money a little bit more. To me, it's more so on the Colgate side, and this matchup screams of a game stack for GPPs with the potential to go, 90 plus, like it did with the time they played Syracuse earlier this year and they beat them, and everybody on the team just shattered. Obviously, Wisconsin's defense better than Syracuse, but at these prices, I could see all these guys going 5X potentially. And when I say all these guys, I mean the 4 that I mentioned, not the entire team. What do you think?
It's actually a really good matchup for Colgate, like you said, and they have the possibility to pull an upset here. And for a 3.14 to only have a spread of around 7, that kind of speaks volumes. That Vegas kind of thinks that it's going to be a pretty close game. And like you said, I mean, Colgate's offense is predicated about spacing and kind of jacking up threes, which they do pretty well. And Wisconsin's defense has kind of been a little bit of smoke and mirrors this year. It hasn't been as stout as maybe their record kind of indicates. So yeah, I really like the pricing on the Colgate side. My favorite is probably Nelly Cummings, to be honest, just because he's their highest used player. And, I think the ball is going to be in his hands more than anybody else in a tournament kind of setting where everything's on the line. I do have interest in Jack Ferguson there at 5,800. He's probably the guy who can get hot the quickest on the team. And if they're going to beat Wisconsin, it's probably going to come from him. So I'm interested there. I do have interest there at 5.8. He's probably my second most favorite. And then, like you said, you obviously have to look at Moffitt at 3.7. It depends on your roster build, but he is just way too cheap, and he's kind of just like an auto punt right there at 3.7. Depending on how you want to build your roster, if you want to get some of those studs in there, he allows you to do that. But it's funny how you kind of glanced over Johnny Davis in this matchup at 8.6. He's kind of been struggling recently, but if we rewind maybe a month ago and you saw him at 8.6. versus a Colgate team who is not good at all defensively, who has absolutely nobody who can guard him. Don't you think this is a smash spot for Johnny Davis? Yeah, I know the injury is a little worrisome, right? Because he's coming off that, I think it was an ankle or high ankle sprain. But he looked fairly good. He didn't shoot the ball well in their last matchup, but he looked, as far as the way he moved, he looked fine. And, if this is going to be a close game, we've seen Johnny Davis kind of go in Terminator mode. And, I think this is going to be a game where he goes like 28-14 with 2 blocks, 3 steals. Like, he can have a massive fantasy performance. And he's only 8,600. It's not like he's priced out at 9K like he is sometimes. I actually really like Johnny Davis today as a pay-up option. I mean, other than him, I'm off Wisconsin, but I did circle Johnny Davis when I was first looking at the slate. What do you think? Am I a little crazy?
No. I mean, the Colgate's not going to by any means slow him down. Yeah, it's just a matter
no one
of
who can guard him.
I would really like him if he's going to be in attack mode and not settling for jumpers. If he's going to be, getting himself to the foul line and just relentlessly attacking and building points that way, definitely. And it wasn't as if I meant to spurn him or say, or not go into more detail about it. It's just more so I'm kind of really geared towards this mid-range build. The 8.6 price is fine for him. I definitely, like I had mentioned, before that, I think, he's obviously in play. It's just the opportunity cost there. Do we think it's a 45? Do we think it's a 35? And they're going to go as far as he drags them, like I said. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And there's value in the same game to be able to fit him. So I guess we'll have to figure out, is Moffitt Davis better than Malachi Smith and Brashkovich? Or, I mean, I don't know. That'll be something I'll have to sleep on and figure out.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, he's in play. You're right. There's no one, there are going to be so many points scored here that, I just don't want to see him settle. And I don't know, the ankle, what the degree is. I mean, obviously he played 34 minutes last game, so it can't be bothering him that much. So he's probably fine, like you said.
I mean, I just have the KenPom page open now, and Colgate is 203rd nationally in defense.
Yep, another one of those offensive.
And they could get sped up. They have games in the 70s in possessions. I don't know. I got to dig into it more, but something to me just screams like this is a Johnny Davis 30 and 12 game. If Wisconsin's going to pull it out, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, that because the offense, I mean, where else is the offense going to come? I mean, like I said, I think Brad Davison will be chucking threes to try to keep up, but I mean, where else would the offense actually come from? And I mean, we saw Joey Girard score 27 against these guys back in November.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't really give up a ton of threes, right? It's not like they pack it in. They're 118th in 3-point field goal attempts defense, so they're only allowing 36% of opponents' shots to come from the 3-point line, which is more towards the bottom half. So yeah, I don't know. It's something that jumped out to me.
Yeah, and that's why I just wonder if Colgate's going to come out if they're hitting threes. If Brad Davison's going to try to go into hero mode and try to keep up that way, they're not trading threes for twos. But yeah, Davis. I mean, you nailed the Oscar call. So I wasn't saying to fade Davis by any means. I just don't.
No, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting at you all. I'm just. It's just something that I was looking at, and I think it's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that, if it's one of those games where he's putting up 50, then absolutely him and Moffitt over those two mid-range guys might make the most sense. So one to sleep on for sure. The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to pull away from Wright State too, which might be a mistake, but I have a kind of an odd feeling about them. All right, last game, TCU versus Seton Hall, the nightcapper. Seton Hall -1, a total just a tick under 130. TCU very slow, 245th tempo ranking. Seton Hall 161. Break this one down for us, please, sir.
Yeah, so both of these teams kind of match up pretty well with each other defensively. They're both very long. They're both interior. Their teams are kind of built towards their length in the interior and in the paint. From a matchup perspective, Seton Hall, the thing I worry about them is they haven't played super well after Bryce Aiken went down with the injury. Kadari Richmond's been a great replacement, and he's done pretty well at the point for Seton Hall. But the thing that they miss is in close games, Bryce Aiken used to kind of take over the playmaking ability of that offense and make plays down the stretch to lead them to victories. And Seton Hall is just missing that. Coming into the season, I thought that would be Jarrett Roden, but he's been so inconsistent this year. I mean, he's still an absolutely great player. But it's kind of been Bryce Aiken, and now they don't have him. So that kind of worries me. And on the TCU side, you do have a bona fide stud in Mike Miles that can make plays down the stretch. So I think this one's going to be a grind fest. I think it's going to be more defensively minded. TCU loves to get on the offensive glass. I think they rank second nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. So I think it's going to be a little sloppy, very defensive minded. And just because TCU has that Mike Miles in the backcourt, I think they can pull this one out. So I'm on the TCU side. From a fantasy perspective, Mike Miles is pretty cheap at 6,300. He's something that I do have him in my player pool. But he's in that same 6K range. Do you want to play him over Azar Swain or Malachi Smith? I don't know. Maybe it's something you consider if you're behind and you need to swap out and get a little bit a differential in your lineup. And this is the late game, so maybe he provides that opportunity if that's something you need to do. Because I don't think a lot of people are going to own a lot of pieces from this game. So I do have interest in Mike Miles. But besides that, I don't think I'm really looking anywhere else. I mean, you can try to play big man roulette on the Seton Hall side with trying to pick the correct Tyrese Samuel or Obiagu, but on a 15-game slate, you don't have to do that. So, the only really guy I'm looking at here is Mike Miles, and I'm not prioritizing him either. So it's that's all I got, Walt.
I know.
It's not an exciting fantasy. It's not an exciting fantasy game.
No, I like the TCU side for my bracket and betting purposes, perhaps. But I don't see myself really getting too invested in this one. I think it'll be kind of filled with more physicality than maybe people think. So, yeah, I'm out on it. Definitely.
I do want to mention that I've been reading about Richmond's status because he does have that thumb injury, and it seems like he's good to go. If anybody was worried about that, because then if he's out, then that kind of bumps Harris up to a possible value play, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and he's Richmond's he's 6'2" also, so there's another guy. Yeah. All right, so now we're into core territory for DK and FanDuel. I'll give a FanDuel core here real quick, and then we'll get your DraftKings score. So Paul Atkinson is 5-1 on FanDuel, way too cheap. Obviously, locking him in. The Texas Tech side we weren't too excited about, but they do have Bryson Williams down there at 4-9. Again, somebody who's just kind of locked into 20, 22-ish fantasy points at 4-9. Yeah, I'll run him there. And then Walker Kessler is just 7-9 on the FanDuel. So Atkinson, Bryson Williams, Walker Kessler. But there's a ton of guys who are cheap. I mean, Jovan Quinterly's only 4-8 there. Caleb Daniels is 4-5. Andrew Jones is 4-8. I mean, they've got Wesley's 5-4. Like, you can legit play whoever you want on FanDuel. They're really not trying at all on their pricing, whereas DK's at least making some of it pretty tight. What is your DraftKings core looking like at this current moment?
All right, so starting with a pay-up option, I'm going to go Johnny Davis at 8,600. Right. As of right now, I have him in my main lineup. That can obviously change. My main lineup changed many times this morning heading into lock. But I really like the matchup. I think that Colgate is going to play them tough and keep this game close. And I think Wisconsin is going to lean on Johnny Davis to make plays down the stretch, kind of like he did in that Indiana game where he scored 55 fantasy points, kind of like that Purdue game where he scored 60 fantasy points. Yeah. I kind of see that happening here for Wisconsin to try to keep their tourney hopes alive, because I do think Colgate can spread Wisconsin out, hit some shots, maybe get up. And then Johnny Davis kind of goes into that Terminator mode that we've seen him hit before. I like Johnny Davis as my primary pay-up. Mid-range, I'm going to leave some guys for you because I know you like some of these guys. I'm going to go with Paul Atkinson, Bigs versus Alabama. Let's ride that wave out. It's been successful for us all season. So let's continue to do that. The thing that worries about me is that, he gets the rug pulled from him sometimes, but down this stretch here, it seems like Bray has kind of instilled confidence in Atkinson to roll him out basically the whole game. So that doesn't worry me as much as it did earlier in the season. The price is too cheap for him. The matchup is a smash spot for him. So Atkinson's my mid-range. And then we didn't really talk about values too much just because we kind of harped on more of a balanced build. And there's so many good plays in that 6K, high 5K range. Moffitt is too easy of one. I'm going to go Nelly Cummings at 4,800. I think he's my favorite value play of the slate on the Colgate side.
Love it.
What about you, Walt?
So I'm looking at Xavier. So I don't even really have at this moment like a core like high price guy, I guess. So I'm just gonna give like my three guys that I'm just.
You're not even gonna throw Jelly Walker in there, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's definitely gonna be in there. He's definitely the posh play of the day. I think is what he's gonna man that for us like Triple J did. But Xavier Swain, I mean, just I think against Purdue. I mean, you can go back and if you guys aren't believing in it, you can a lot of the big games we've mentioned for some players we like today had those big games against Purdue. So, I mean, it's just time and time again, we're seeing, lead guards kill them. So I think Swain at 6'2" is just way too cheap. Malachi Smith at 6K. I'm going to run him. That's just another one of my March heroes. And then value, I think it's going to be Andre Curbelo. I think, Curbelo versus Hoggard, I was kind of him and Han, but after you said, Walker's probably good to go. And, Izzo's minutes are all over the place. The only player you can really count on to play 30 is Max Christie. And I'm not going to use him. So yeah,
Curbelo Brown, right?
My cheap guy. So those three, Jalen Walker definitely in my lineup, kind of as the fringe core, but he's carrying the posh play of the day. So that essentially makes him the core because everyone knows I'm never fading that designation. So yep, I'm on him. I'm on him big time. And Atkinson, of course, so I have a lineup I feel pretty damn good about. I'll have to decide. And then Colgate, I think you can run. I'll have to get a GBP lineup in there just to stack that game. Moving over to PrizePicks real quick, and then we're basically done. Xavier Swain's fantasy total is 23.9. So I obviously like the over there against Purdue. I've been, harping and chatting him up quite a bit. I think that's a really solid spot. Paul Atkinson over 24.5 fantasy points against Bama, like way too low. I think you could even look at Blake Wesley over 22.6 as well. That's fairly cheap. And then the other one that I
like Edie over 26.
Okay, yep.
I mean, Yale has nobody who can guard him. He should hit that pretty easily.
Yeah. The Nelly Cummings' fantasy total is 22.4. So if you like him, he should be able to.
I even like Blake Wesley over 22.6 there.
Yep.
That's a little too cheap for him.
Yep. Definitely. So that is it. So I had a bet with Corey. If Vermont couldn't pull it off, then I had to do the hog call, and I saved it for the end because I felt like less people would maybe be watching, but it's not like they can't watch it on demand. So
I can't wait to clip this.
Oh man, I don't get embarrassed very often, but all right, cool. So here we go. Woo! Razorbacks! Woo! Pig Suey! Yeah, Razorbacks! All right. I didn't do it 100% right, but that's what I got. Oh, there's Corey in the chat. All right, I was hoping he was still watching.
I love it, Walt. That's awesome. That is great.
Hey, man, I don't welch on my bets, win or lose. I mean, I'm going to do it. So
there you go.
I might have to have another one with him on this next round and see what we can do with Teddy Allen. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So this weekend, I don't know what shows are going to be like for tomorrow. It's going to be quite a busy weekend for me, obviously for everyone, but maybe shows will be earlier. I'm going to be looking at maybe doing one during the middle part of the day tomorrow, possibly if they release the slate early enough instead of night, because tomorrow night's going to be super crazy. I'll be around. My article will be out early in the morning. Do you have any betting stuff or any appearances coming up tomorrow or anything that you want to tell the folks to look out for?
I will have a free article for my best bets out early tomorrow morning. I should have 4 of them. So look out for that. I'll tweet that sometime in tomorrow AM. I don't have any live shows tomorrow, unfortunately. But yeah, just excited for another large slate to grind and some crazy college basketball.
Hell yeah. And then tomorrow morning, about noon, 12:30, I'll be making a guest spot on Mean Streets again. We're going to talk about the Hokies maybe getting through. We're going to be chatting about that quite a bit. So, and then, yeah, like I said, there'll be some day shows here the next 2-3 days. But, yeah, we got to enjoy this while we have it, because pretty soon we're going to be saying, man, the grind, I missed the grind. What am I doing? We're going to be getting some sleep, but it's still going to be missing that grind. So thanks again, Mike, for coming on. I know we were going to go on earlier, but it was you that wanted to go later for the games, and I appreciate you being a trooper and staying up.
There's some good ones going on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But appreciate it, guys. Let's win lots of money tomorrow, and see you later.